Chapter 39. In the pitch-black night, Jadeite City was still covered by a haze. In the misty sky, not even a sliver of moonlight could be found. However, the entire city was still illuminated by countless rays of light. It seemed to be announcing that even without the blessing of the heavens, this criminal paradise could still rely on its own strength to survive. Tonight, Jadeite City was destined to not be peaceful. Lianping's killing had not stopped since midnight. According to Vic's information, Lianping had already wiped out a few of Lone Wolf's small strongholds outside of Paradise Street and Diamond Street. Apart from those prostitutes, female slaves, and children, not a single one was left. Then, he killed his way to Diamond Street as fast as he could. When he killed Kodo, the leader of Diamond Street. In this city, there were already people who noticed his movements. It was the special task force that had been watching every blade of grass and every tree in the city since the three major powers started fighting. Jadeite City's special task force's Jiang Chuan was holding a cigarette in his mouth as he leaned against a telephone pole. With his stubble and messy hair, if he wasn't wearing the special task force's blue and white uniform, perhaps other people would only think of him as a middle-aged man who had nothing to do and accomplished nothing. However, the Special Task Force's 3 words were enough to show that he was different from the rest. The Special Task Force was also known as the Xia Dragonfinch. They were in charge of all matters related to ability users within the Xia. However, apart from the headquarters located in the capital, every city only had one Special Task Force. It could be a single person or a team. In some cities, the Special Task Force was faintly discernible. Ordinary citizens could not sense their existence at all and had no impression of the city's development and management. Just like in the central city, some special task forces relied on their powerful force to restrict the development of the entire city, affecting the lives and safety of every citizen in the city. Even the public security system, which was originally at the same level, had no choice but to listen to their commands. This had to do with the city's location, the density of ability users, and the personnel of the authorities. As for Jadeite City, it clearly belonged to the latter of the 2 situations mentioned above. In Jiang Chuan was the candidate sent by the Jadeite City Secret Service to come into contact with Lianping. A member of the Special Task Force walked up to him and reported, "Sir, the people we sent just now have news that the underground auction house on Diamond Street has been destroyed. More than 100 people were killed, and there are no survivors except for some female slaves. However, most of them were frightened, and it would take some time to pry information out of them. However, among the dead, we found Kodo, one of the leaders of the Lone Wolf group, Jia Lan of the Kirin group, and Lu Haoyin of the Hall of Loyalty. Kodo is just an ordinary person. Jia Lan was also a loser. Lu Haoyin, on the other hand, was quite strong despite his lack of control. To be able to kill him, it means that this Lianping has some skills. Sir, should we no need?" Jiang Chuan smiled and threw the cigarette in his hand on the ground. He crushed it with his foot and said, "I didn't expect that this guy would still refuse to give up after making such a big fuss. All of you, stay away from him. Prepare anesthetics and strong tranquilizers. It's not easy to handcuff a mutant ability user. Also, tell our brothers on Paradise Street to retreat. I'll catch him myself." The adjutant didn't seem to react until Jiang Chuan shouted again, "What are you waiting for?" "Yes, sir." Only then did he run away. Jiang Chuan looked at the tall buildings in the distance. There was an inconspicuous black dot jumping between the buildings, heading toward Jiang Chuan. As Lianping jumped between the buildings, he looked at a brightly lit building in front of him. That was the Lone Wolf's base on Paradise Street. He stopped on the roof of a building opposite the building. Lianping observed and thought about the best way to break into the building. Apart from this place, I've already swept through all the other places. It's only been 3 hours since dawn. Even if they notice that something is wrong, they shouldn't be able to retreat immediately. Next, I just need to kill all of Lone Wolf's people." Thinking of this, Lianping's eyes glowed red. At this moment, a voice came from behind Lianping. It almost gave him a fright. "Lianping, right?" Jiang Chuan walked out from the shadows and looked at the surprised Lianping. He smiled and said, "Although you're Xiao Liekong's subordinate, You've caused enough trouble for today, haven't you? Come back to the station with me. Lianping immediately got into a battle stance. He stared at Jiang Chuan and said, "Who are you? I don't understand what you're saying." "Haha, are you playing dumb?" Jiang Chuan said, "I'm Jiang Chuan from Xia Dragonfinch's Jadeite City Division. You've cleaned up enough of Lone Wolf's territory. Hurry up and follow me back to the station before you cause an even bigger accident. If you get hurt, it won't look good for everyone." "Trouble? I kill those scum. To you, it's a trouble?" Li Onping looked at Jiang Chuan hatefully and said, "Secret Service? You're also considered police, right? You should also care about ability users' crimes, right? Why didn't you ask after Lone Wolf harmed so many people, kidnapped so many people, and even engaged in human trafficking? Today, I killed a few of their people, and you came to arrest me. You're also considered police? So you're a naive brat." Hearing Li Onping's words, Jiang Chuan frowned. He looked at Li Onping with disdain and said, "Brat, what do you know? Even if Lone Wolf is gone, there will still be Lone Tiger, Lone Dog, and Lone Pig. Jadeite City is a natural hotbed of crime. It can't be stopped. Moreover, Lone Wolf and the others still know the rules. They only touch people from small families. They wipe their butts well and won't cause social unrest. With them around, it's better than some people who don't know the rules. When the time comes, catching thieves every day and fighting with each other will only make Jadeite City a mess." "Ridiculous," Lianping interrupted Jiang Chuan's words. "Because you can't stop them all, you don't stop them? Because there are too many criminals, you turn a blind eye to the criminals in front of you? How can you say this kind of bullshit about compromising with criminals?" Hearing Lianping's words, Jiang Chuan was so angry that he laughed. He had seen too many of this kind of righteous brat. At that moment, he didn't plan to argue with the other anymore. Instead, he used his strength to push the other down. "Good, you talk big. You're obviously a rookie who doesn't even know how to hide your psychic energy, and you dare to pretend in front of me." Jiang Chuan ignored the other's hostility and walked step by step towards Lianping. He slowly opened his mouth to say, "Your psychic energy is only at the first level, right? I'll let you take a look at mine. Now, I'm very curious. After knowing the difference between us, can you still say what you just said again?" As soon as he finished speaking, before Lianping could react to the other's meaning, an extremely cold and malicious aura surged towards him, almost covering his entire body. What is this? Lianping's mind flashed. This feeling is similar to the energy in my body. But why does this Jiang Chuan also have this kind of energy? Seeing Lianping's silence, Jiang Chuan smiled proudly. "You're a mutant type, aren't you? Let me tell you, I'm one too. You should understand that I'm also a mutant type, and my ability level is higher than yours. You definitely won't be able to defeat me. Just the impact of my psychic energy alone has already rendered you immobile. Now, have you come to your senses and realized the reality in front of you? You call this psychic energy?" Lianping looked at Jiang Chuan. He did not understand why the other party looked so proud. Although he was hit by the other party's psychic energy impact, he did not feel immobile. At this time, what the two of them did not know was that Lianping's ability was not a mutant type at all. The so-called mutant type referred to the mutation of the physical body and the ability to surpass that of an ordinary person. On the other hand, Lianping could absorb other people's bodies and souls to strengthen his own body. Strictly speaking, such an ability should be considered an external one of the 6 major abilities. Moreover, although his ability was only at the first level, his physical strength had long surpassed the first level under the continuous strengthening. Therefore, although he was not a mutant-type ability user, his physical strength was better than that of a mutant-type ability user. Therefore, judging Lianping's ability level based on his ability level would only lead to a serious error. Hearing Lianping's question, Jiang Chuan was surprised. "You don't even know about psychic energy? That's ridiculous. Forget it. It seems that Huang Linjun's information is also nonsense. After all, if Xia Laikong really took you in, it's impossible that he didn't tell you this common knowledge. Kid, you don't know Xia Laikong, do you?" "No." Lianping shook his head. As expected, Jiang Chuan looked at Lianping as if he was looking at an idiot. He laughed happily. You made me very angry just now. If Xiao Laikong really protected you, it wouldn't be easy for me. But since he's not, then I'll beat you half to death and hand you over to Lone Wolf. It'll be fine. Chapter 40. On the other side, long before Jiang Lin and the others discovered and stopped Li Anping, the police station had already sent out a surveillance camera. He had already sent police officers to monitor Lone Wolf's building. But the purpose? What? You want us to retreat? A police officer in civilian clothes said in disbelief. He looked to be in his late 20s. Although his face was haggard, it was still difficult to hide his vigor. At this moment, he looked at his superior with some disbelief. The middle-aged man in uniform in front of him said, "Okay, Qin Yong, I know that because of your brother, you were a little emotional about this, but this is an order from above. You have to consider the big picture. You can't let your emotions affect your decisions." "I'm letting my emotions affect my decisions?" Qin Yong said angrily. Just now, there were at least 2 groups of people who brought a group of women into Lone Wolf's lair. You want us to just watch? You asked us to keep an eye on this place in the middle of the night just to escort this group of scum to commit a crime? The middle-aged man didn't say anything. He naturally wouldn't tell Qin Yong that this was an order from Jiang Chuan's group. Rather than saying that they were sent to monitor Li Anping, it was more accurate to say that they were sent to protect Li Anping. They were to stop him before he caused even more trouble. And this involved the division of interest between Lone Wolf and the police, which was even more dark and messy. Now that they had discovered Li Anping's location, they naturally didn't need to stay here anymore. So he said, "I don't need to explain anything to you. You just need to obey the order now." Qin Yong gasped and stared fiercely at the middle-aged man, but the other party didn't budge. Qin Yong said stubbornly, "Officer Zhang, do you want me to just watch this group of scum rape people? At least I have to go in and rescue them. You have no evidence. Without evidence, I won't send people in to search." Officer Zhang still shook his head and said, "Qin Yong, you better know who you are. You have to take them away now." Qin Yong gritted his teeth and looked around. A few colleagues who he was familiar with kept shaking their heads at him and winking at him. His heart was also very conflicted. From a moral point of view, he really couldn't let a group of criminals get away with it. Every time he faced the victim's parents and relatives, he felt ashamed. However, the officer in front of him was a typical academic. He had always been somewhat at odds with the practical people like him. Since he took office, Qin Yong had contradicted him many times. If he did not obey the order this time, thinking of his meager salary and his increasingly dissatisfied girlfriend, Qin Yong slowly lowered his head. Perhaps the hot-bloodedness of youth was still there, but the heavy burden of the economy and the reality of life could no longer make him pay for his extravagant hot-bloodedness. The middle-aged man, who was Officer Zhang, looked at Qin Yong with disdain. He had already expected Qin Yong to yield. Seeing this, a few people who usually didn't get along with Qin Yong said in a low voice, "If you knew this would happen, you would have been fine. Why are you still so stubborn? Why are you pretending to be heroes? You're making us look like bad guys." He seemed to have sensed the contempt in Officer Zhang's eyes, as well as the gloating, pitying, or sympathetic gazes of his colleagues. Qin Yong clenched his fists tightly. Am I really doing the right thing? Qin Yong lowered his head and suddenly thought of his brother. He remembered that night when Qin Wu went out as usual but never came back. He had always wanted to ask his brother if he regretted sacrificing himself to punish crime. And in a place like Jadeite City, could justice really be upheld? But at this moment, he seemed to have figured something out. Some things might not succeed, and there would be no results. But someone had to do it. He slowly loosened his fists. His voice was not loud, but unexpectedly firm. "Officer Zhang, you take them away. I'll go there myself." After saying that, he did not wait for the other party to answer. He turned and walked toward Lone Wolf's building, leaving behind a group of people who were either surprised, regretful, or angry. Officer Zhang behind him shouted, "Qin Yong, if you go today, don't think about coming back." Seeing that Qin Yong did not respond, he stomped his feet and looked at his subordinates. "What are you looking at? Do you all want to go and help? Why aren't you leaving with me?" Qin Yong was in plain clothes. After entering the building, he did not attract the attention of others. He knew that in this place, The identity of a police officer would only cause hostility. With Lone Wolf's ruthlessness, it was not impossible for him to kill a police officer. Moreover, he had now broken into the other party's lair. He could only move carefully. When no one was paying attention, he hid in the safety passageway. Then, he tried his best to avoid the surveillance cameras as he walked upstairs. He had been tracking Lone Wolf's news for a few months. According to the information he got from his informant, the building had a total of 13 floors. The floors below the 11th floor were rented out by Lone Wolf as an ordinary office building. Only the 11th to 13th floors were Lone Wolf's. With his years of experience and skills, he easily sneaked into the building's upper floors. He pushed the door of the safety passageway and found that the doors from the 10th to 11th floors were sealed. He definitely could not take the elevator. They had their own direct elevator from the 11th floor and above. That was where Lone Wolf's main defense was. So, he looked around and glanced at the window at the side. He saw Qin Yong open the window and climb out. The 10-story building was still a little dizzy. Qin Yong suppressed his fear and walked over to the window. He climbed in through an open window. As soon as he entered the room, Qin Yong quickly squatted down and took out his pistol. He looked around and found that it was a men's washroom. It seemed that the ventilation fan was broken, so the windows were open for ventilation. At that moment, a phone rang from a single room in the washroom. Okay, I got it. I know. I'm in the washroom. Okay, I'll come over now. A man sat on the toilet and hung up the phone helplessly. Suddenly, he found the door to the washroom open. A strong man was pointing a gun at him. Qin Yong said coldly, "Tell me, where are the girls you just sent here?" "Brother, don't shoot." "I'll tell you anything," the man said nervously. Qin Yong pointed the gun at the man's head and asked a few more questions. The man answered smoothly. He did not know if the man was lying to him. Just as he was about to knock the man out, he felt a huge force hit him from behind. He felt a pain in the back of his head and fell to the ground. He was dizzy. He could only vaguely see a few people walking in and talking in front of him. He tried to point the gun at them, but found that the gun in his hand was taken away. One of the men saw that he was still struggling. Another kick landed on his body. Qin Yong blacked out and lost consciousness. When Qin Yong woke up, he found that he was sitting on a sofa. There were no shackles or ropes on him. He stood up directly. In front of him was an independent office. There were crystal lights, ivory decorations, and some art pieces that he had never seen before. The entire office was more than 300 square meters. It was shockingly big. He could only see a desk by the window. A gentle-looking man with glasses was sitting upright on a chair. He kept flipping through the documents on his desk as if he didn't notice Qin Yong. Qin Yong wanted to do something, but he did not dare to act rashly because of the strong bodyguards in black. "Qin Yong, right?" The man with glasses did not raise his head and said, "You have been following us recently. To be honest, it is a bit troublesome. I heard that you don't listen to Officer Zhang. Are you the leader of Lone Wolf?" Qin Yong asked. The man with glasses was still reading the documents and said, "You can call me right. To be honest, I hate you policemen. How much do you want to stop investigating? I want you to let go of all the girls in your hands and disband Lone Wolf." "Huh?" Wright laughed and then slammed the hand holding the pen on the table. The bodyguards on the side also surrounded him and stared at Qin Yong fiercely. One of them even took out a pistol and pointed it at Qin Yong's head. Qin Yong looked at them fearlessly. Wright's voice came into his ears. "If you were not a policeman, you would have been sent to the dog cage and eaten by the dog." Wright's voice became cold. "I give you 10 points of income every year. Do you think it is useful for you to come here alone? I can say that even if you have all the evidence of my business, you can't catch me, because the evidence will disappear once it reaches the police station. What is the law? It is just a tool used by the superior to control the inferior. The environment of Jadeite City is the general trend. It meets all the conditions of a hotbed of crime. The residents here are used to all this. Do you think you can change by catching a few thieves? Naive, you're not only going against me, you're also going against your colleagues and your superior. You will become the public enemy of everyone. Officer Qin, I will give you 2 million now. You will not be able to earn money as a policeman for a lifetime. I only have one request. Don't worry about Lone Wolf anymore. Silence. Qin Yong did not speak. Wright also seemed to be very patient. He kept looking at the documents as if he was not worried that Qin Yong would not agree. Until Wright felt a little impatient and frowned. Qin Yong slowly said, "My brother. His name is Qin Wu." Hearing this, Wright, who had been looking at the documents, raised his head for the first time. He looked at the disappointed Qin Yong and shrugged. "I'm sorry about your brother. To be honest, I admire him a lot. But he was too agitated at the time. We could only get rid of him. You have to understand that we don't want to get rid of a policeman. That means we will have to spend a lot of money on your leader. I hope you will not follow in his footsteps. We can solve this peacefully. Then what about the girls? Officer Qin, that is business. Many of Lone Wolf's people have wives and children. We understand that feeling. But business is business. To be honest, I will also donate money to charity in private." Qin Yong sneered. He did not speak and just looked at Wright with disdain. Wright asked, "You really don't want to think about it?" With a click, the bodyguard who pointed the gun at Qin Yong pulled the safety of the pistol. Looking at his posture, it seemed that as long as Qin Yong said no, he would pull the trigger and shoot Qin Yong. Chapter 41. In the office, the atmosphere was so oppressive that it felt like water was about to drip out. No one spoke. Only the sound of Wright writing on the document could be heard. "Take the money or die," Leet repeated again, but Qin Yong suddenly laughed out loud, and the few people were stunned. Taking advantage of this stunned moment, he took a step forward and dodged the opponent's pistol. Then, he twisted his hands in the big man's hands. The big man who was holding the pistol cried out in pain and let go of his hand. The remaining 3 big men rushed up, but they saw Qin Yong strangling the neck of the big man who held the gun with one hand and the other hand holding the big man's pistol, pointing it at the remaining 3. "Don't come over." The 3 of them looked at each other and could only watch as Qin Yong retreated, not daring to come forward. Wright stood up from behind the desk and looked at Qin Yong with disgust. "A bunch of trash." Qin Yong used the bodyguards to cover his body and slowly retreated in the direction of Wright. The 3 bodyguards in front of him only dared to follow step by step, not daring to make the slightest movement for fear of being shot. Wright shouted, "Qin Yong, put down the gun now, and we can still talk." Qin Yong was unmoved. He moved to the front of the desk and smashed the big man's neck with the butt of the gun, knocking him out. Then he quickly changed the muzzle and pointed it at Wright behind the desk. "Where are the women you caught now? You can't save them. This is business. Not something I can decide alone." Bang! Qin Yong shattered the glass behind Leiter with a shot and roared, "Where are they?" Wright didn't say a word. He just stared at Qin Yong as if he wanted to see through him, but Qin Yong was unmoved. He just pointed the gun at Wright's head and turned his head to look at the 3 bodyguards from time to time. The atmosphere was in a deadlock. At this moment, as if it was because of the gunshot, there were bursts of shouting and footsteps outside the office. A few minutes later, just as the 5 people in the room were either nervous or worried, the tightly shut office door suddenly opened. Qin Yong turned his head and saw a man and a woman appear at the door. The woman was bald and had tattoos on her face. She looked extremely ferocious. When she saw Qin Yong's gaze, she suddenly laughed. "Don't come any closer." Qin Yong's intuition, which had been on the front lines for many years, told him that the man and woman in front of him were very dangerous. He felt a murderous aura coming at him. But before he could finish his words, the woman had already disappeared. He subconsciously wanted to pull the trigger on Wright, but his hand tightened and his entire arm was tied up by a large bundle of hair. He couldn't see who the person in front of him was, so he could only throw a punch at the figure in a daze. But the next moment, he was shocked to find that his hands and feet had been tied up. At this time, he looked up again and found that the one who had tied him up with her hair was the bald woman at the door, but now she had a full head of long hair. The 4 to 5 meter long hair bound his hands and feet, making him unable to move. Trash. As the woman spoke, her hair danced like a venomous snake. It swept away Qin Yong's pistol and threw him to the ground. Heavily smashed onto the ground, Qin Yong felt that his bones were about to break, and his entire body was faintly aching. On the other side, the 3 big men from before had already rushed up punching and kicking him. Outside the office, many people also rushed in with guns. Wright ignored Qin Yong on the ground and smiled at the woman who had become bald again. "Miss Tian, thank you very much. If it weren't for your help, it would have been really troublesome." The bald woman called Miss Tian leaned on the sofa and said casually, "Even if I didn't come, he could have solved it. I just did it in passing." After saying that, she also looked at the man who had just come in with her, obviously hinting that this man was also an expert. At this time, the man was standing behind Wright, expressionless like a robot. In fact, from the moment he entered the door until now, his expression hadn't changed at all. I still have to thank you." Wright smiled. "Miss Tian, this time, you came here because of Commander Fong, right? But Lone Wolf has always been neutral. I really can't decide the matter between you and the Loyalty Hall. I'm just a businessman. What Commander Fong said, we have to wait for our leader to come back. No problem, we are very patient." As she said that, the bald woman looked at Qin Yong on the ground. "He's a police officer, right? If you continue to fight like this, you'll beat him to death. There's no other way. His name is Qin Yong. He's been investigating us for a while." Wright took out a cigarette from his pocket. "In the past few months, he has already caught a few of my men. This time, he just directly barged in and asked me for the person. I'm a businessman. I can't just give the person to him without taking a cent." The bald woman looked at Qin Yong lying in a pool of blood and licked her lips. What a pity! On the rooftop of the opposite building, Jiang Chuan was lying on the ground covered in blood. His body was torn open all over, and his hands and feet were strangely twisted. His eyes were filled with disbelief and fear. Looking at the black figure on the rooftop, Jiang Chuan muttered, "How is this possible? How can this be? Your psychic power is only at the first level. Why is your physical strength so strong? Why?" He questioned loudly. Suddenly, Jiang Chuan thought, could it be he's not a mutant type? Jiang Chuan's guess was correct, but he would never have thought that because of the uniqueness of Li Anping's ability, his own ability level could not be used to measure his combat strength. As long as he absorbed enough human souls, even if he was only at level 0, Li Anping would still be invincible. Li Anping looked at Jiang Chuan, who was like a stray dog at his feet, and said coldly, "I have a few questions to ask you. If you tell me, I can consider not killing you." "What do you want to know?" Jiang Chuan said nervously. The arrogance he had before he rushed over had now been beaten to a pulp by Li Anping. Thinking of his opponent's demon-like body, he could not help but tremble all over. Some people looked arrogant and conceited on the surface, but in fact, it was just a layer of skin that strength, power, wealth, and victory gave them. Once they faced failure, faced death, and met someone stronger than them, they were no different from ordinary people. These people were no different from ordinary people. On the other hand, some people were naturally arrogant. No matter how strong or weak they were, or who their opponent was, their attitude would not change at all. Jiang Chuan was obviously the former. Although his psychic energy was stronger than Li Anping's, and after it covered his body, his defense and resistance to attacks were far stronger than ordinary people, he was still not Li Anping's match. In the beginning, Li Anping was like a cat playing with a mouse, leaving wounds on Jiang Chuan's body one after another. In the end, when Jiang Chuan's Nianqi was weakened, Li Anping directly crippled him with punches and kicks, bringing Jiang Chuan into infinite fear. "Tell me, what is psychic energy?" The so-called psychic energy referred to a type of energy that only ability users above level 0 had. This type of energy was invisible and could not be seen by ordinary people, nor could it be detected by any technological means. Those who could see and feel chi were only aptitude users who were level 0 and above. The specific composition of psychic energy was believed to be a high degree of unity between the soul and the body. Only by continuously training one's body, soul, and ability could one improve. After listening to Jiang Chuan's explanation, Li Anping reluctantly nodded. It was no wonder that he could feel the energy in his body before, but he had never seen the energy of others. At first, he thought that this energy was unique to his ability. Now it seemed that it was not. He recalled the recoil from Lu Haoyan's body and the explosive force when he hit him. It seemed that it was also the effect of psychic energy. It was just that he was not a level 1 ability user at that time, so he could not see psychic energy. Also, when he was chasing after the 3 ability users in Zhongdu City, they seemed to be able to use other methods besides sound waves to sense him from a long distance away. At first, Li Onping thought that it was because of their combat intuition and experience. Now, it seemed that it was also the effect of psychic energy. However, Li Onping did not feel any power protecting those 3. It was probably because their ability levels were too low that he could only sense psychic energy. Although Li Onping was only level 0 at that time, the energy in his body was equivalent to psychic energy. It was just that he could not see other people's psychic energy. This was also one of the differences between him and ordinary ability users. In comparison, Lu Haoyan's ability level was higher, and his psychic energy was also higher, so he was more durable. Later on, although Cotter's ability was strange, it did not take much effort to fight him. He probably did not have psychic energy. Yes, his ability must be at level 0, and he did not have psychic energy. That was why he could hide from everyone so that no one knew that he was an ability user. His strange ability was indeed suitable for him to stay at level 0 to plot against others. After getting the information about psychic energy, a series of thoughts flashed through Li Onping's mind. On the other hand, Hei Qi in his mind said, "So humans have this kind of energy? Psychic energy. So the energy in your body now is psychic energy?" Based on what he said, that should be what he meant. Li Onping thought, if that's the case, the soul energy I absorbed strengthened my physical body under the effect of my ability. And after my ability leveled up, my mind also became stronger, and it cooperated with my physical body to produce psychokinesis. Psychic energy. Is it the combination of physical strength and spirit power? But I can only sense other people's psychic energy after my ability leveled up and my spirit and soul are strong enough. Li Onping clenched his fist and felt a wave of energy, which was psychic energy, transfer to his fist. He felt that he could control psychic energy at will. The strength of his body seemed to increase where psychic energy was attached to. However, the amount of psychic energy he had now was too little, so the increase was negligible. When he attacked Jiang Chuan earlier, his opponent had gathered psychic energy and used it, so the defensive effect was very good. He knew that there must be a lot of information about psychic energy, but this was not the place to learn. He asked again, "Who are Xia Laikong and Huang Linjun?" "You really don't know Xia Laikong?" Jiang Chuan thought for a moment and said, "Xia Laikong is a high-ranking member of the Xia Dragonfinch, and he is also considered one of the top 3 in the Xia Dragonfinch. Different from the other 2, he had been serving the royal family before the Xia Dragonfinch was established. It has been more than 50 years now. As for Huang Linjun, he used to be in Jadeite City, but he should be in the Zhongdu Secret Service now. He gave us the wrong information, and that's why we attacked you." Everything is his fault. Li Onping did not comment on Jiang Chuan's answer. Jiang Chuan asked nervously, "How is it? I've told you everything you wanted to ask. Let me go." Suddenly, Li Onping turned his head and looked at the building opposite the building where Lone Wolf was. There was a flash of doubt in his eyes. "What's wrong?" Jiang Chuan asked. "It was a gunshot. Didn't you hear it?" Li Onping saw the other party's confused look and knew that only he heard the sound just now. Just as he was wondering why there was a gunshot, a faint voice came from the direction of the gunshot. It was the sound that he could only hear after the glass in the building was broken. He could only hear the faint voice coming from the opposite building. "Don't come over. Even if I didn't come, I was just passing by. Miss Tian, Commander Fong means the matter between you and Zhong Yi Hall is the leader's decision. He's a police officer. He will be killed. His name is Qin Yong. He investigated us. We can't just give him to him without taking a scent." There were sounds of fighting and yelling mixed in with the noise. Especially in the tall buildings, the wind was strong. Li Onping didn't hear all the conversations clearly, but he could roughly guess. He turned to look at Jiang Chuan. Do you know Qin Yong? Jiang Chuan thought for a moment and quickly said, I think he's from the Criminal Investigation Unit. Why? What's his relationship with Lone Wolf? His brother disappeared a few years ago when he was investigating Lone Wolf. He seems to have been investigating Lone Wolf during this period of time. Jiang Chuan mustered up his courage and asked, Let me go. I promise we won't go against you again. Whatever you want to do in Jadeite City, we will fully support you. From what you told me just now, the higher-ups of the police, no, or should I say, the Secret Service colluded with Lone Wolf, right? Jiang Chuan was stunned. Seeing that Li Anping's face had already darkened, he shouted, It has nothing to do with me. It's all done by them. They collect money from Lone Wolf every year and let Lone Wolf do his business. I'm just a hired thug. I've never been involved in this at all. I beg you, if you don't like Lone Wolf, I'll go back and get them to arrest all of Lone Wolf's men. I promise there won't be such a thing in the future. Li Anping ignored him and lightly punched his chest, ending Jiang Chuan's life. One of my attributes now. This police officer is more powerful than the previous two. He also has more energy. Strength 3. 7. Speed 2. 5. Stamina 4. There are still more than 50 souls to recover. Unfortunately, too many were wasted at the auction house. That's enough. Li Anping picked up the body on the ground and looked across the building. He listened carefully and searched Lone Wolf's building with his eyes. Then he stopped. At this moment, he was looking at Wright's office. Chapter 42. On the 13th floor of Lone Wolf's building, in Wright's office, a group of people surrounded Qin Yong on the ground and beat him up. Qin Yong's consciousness was already blurry. At this moment, he could only hold his head and curl up his body, instinctively reducing the damage he received. On the other side, Wright and the bald woman were sitting on the sofa. Behind them, the robot-like cold-faced man stood there like a bodyguard. Then this matter is settled. When the leader comes back, I will inform Captain Fong immediately. Wright took a puff of the cigarette in his hand and slowly exhaled. He did not even look at Qin Yong. And this month's new dish, I wonder if the soldiers in your team are interested? The bald woman said, As usual, send 10 people over. Those bastards are full of energy every day. No problem, but in terms of price. Seeing the other party's ferocious gaze, Wright immediately explained, The girls that were sent to you a few months ago were basically crippled or crazy when they came back. The warriors of your group are playing a little crazy, so we still need to adjust the price. It's up to you. It's useless for you to tell me the details. When the time comes, you can talk to our accountant. Before she finished speaking, her expression suddenly changed. She and the cold-faced man turned to look out of the window at the same time. In the howling wind, there was a loud bang. A badly mutilated corpse smashed into the glass of the building, creating layers of cracks. The entire corpse was embedded in the glass, but the huge impact had deformed it. It was impossible to see its original appearance. Only the Secret Service uniform could be seen flapping in the wind. In the midst of the exclamations, the cold-faced man had already hidden behind the sofa with Wright in his arms. The bald woman on the side had already stood up. Her hair, which was more than 5 meters long, was like a dancing viper, wrapping her whole body. Be careful! The bald woman's shout was drowned out by the wind. A person had already rushed into the building from midair. The immense power and the speed at which it was impossible to see clearly was like a tornado rushing towards them. First, a whole piece of glass exploded inwards. The bodyguard standing near the window was shot by the glass fragments like bullets and fell down with injuries all over his body. Next, it was the few big men around Qin Yong. The figure passed by them, and they were thrown out like building blocks. One by one, they crashed into the ground from the broken window like dumplings. Screams sounded in the air like notes, but the remaining people in the office could only hear the whistling of the wind. The figure was like an endless storm rushing towards Wright. You're courting death. The bald woman stood in front of Wright, her hair all over her body, stabbing towards Li Anping at the same time. She had once pierced a person through a steel plate and then dismembered his body. Seeing that her opponent wasn't dodging at all, A smile appeared on her face. Get lost. In the whistling sound, the bald woman was grabbed by the hair and thrown out. It was not until she came into contact with the other party that she realized how childish her actions were. The ability that she was proud of was not worth mentioning in front of the other party. The hair that was infused with psychic energy was like straw in the other party's hand. The amazing strength directly took her through 5 walls. When she finally stopped, she had already turned into a pile of rotten meat. The bald woman did not even delay Lianping for a second. At this time, Red had just stood up, but the cold-faced man behind him had already rushed towards Lianping and pushed him back. Go! The next moment, in a flash of white light, 3 people rushed out of the cold-faced man's body, each holding a dagger and stabbing towards Lianping. Clones! Lianping exclaimed and took a step back. This was the first time he had taken a step back since he rushed in. Before he knew the other party's ability, he still chose to be cautious. Just as he took a step back, the 3 people who looked exactly like the cold-faced man had already pounced in front of him. One of them stabbed the heart on the right, the other stabbed the kidney on the left, and the last one was circling towards Lianping's back. These 3 clones of the cold-faced man were skilled in their movements. They cooperated so well that it was as if they were one person. Their killing techniques were also well practiced. If Lianping had just come out of the central city, he might have had a dodge. However, the current Lianping only threw 3 simple punches forward. Bang, bang, bang. With 3 consecutive sounds, the 3 clones were blown up by Lianping in midair, turning into white light spots. Once the 3 of them died, Lianping was about to walk forward. However, he frowned and realized that another 3 people had rushed out of the cold-faced man's body and were pouncing towards Lianping. They look very strange, but they don't have much power. This time, Lianping did not dodge. He had already experienced the battle prowess of the clones. There was no psychic energy on them, and their quality was slightly stronger than ordinary soldiers. However, they did not have any poison, nor did they have any means of self-destruction. In his eyes, their speed was so slow that it made people impatient. Therefore, he had no scruples. With a jab of his finger, Lianping had already destroyed one of the clones. Then he did not stop there. He walked up to the remaining 2 clones and threw out 2 punches at their faces. With 2 banging sounds, another 2 clones were destroyed. However, just as he finished, he saw 3 more clones crawling out of the cold-faced man's body. The other party was clearly determined to hold him back. You're in the way. Lianping rushed forward and swept his arm, destroying all 3 clones. Then, his other hand went from bottom to top and punched the cold-faced man's face. The other party's combat skills were obviously well-trained, and he had rich combat experience. He had already made a blocking action based on instinct. Lianping could even feel the other party's psychic energy surging wildly into his hands. Unfortunately, his movements were too slow and weak compared to Lianping. Just as he moved, Lianping had already punched him in the face. There was a loud rumble. It was as if lightning had struck him. His face was a mess of flesh and blood. His head made a series of muffled sounds and exploded. Before his corpse fell, Lianping had already stepped out and chased him out of the door. The other party had used all his strength to kill the 2 people just now. However, to Lianping, it was just a casual attack. He did not even use the psychic energy that he had just learned. However, his current psychic energy did not strengthen him much. A first-level ability, user could only produce psychic energy. Compared to the slight strengthening of the body by psychic energy, the biggest help at this stage was to be able to see other people's psychic energy. Only second-level ability, users like the snake-haired woman and the cold-faced man had a more obvious strengthening effect of psychic energy. Unfortunately, their bodies had been strengthened by psychic energy, but they were still vulnerable in front of Lianping's body. Help! Shoot! Enemy attack! As Lianping walked out of the office, someone was already shooting at him. Rai was screaming for help as he ran toward the elevator. At the same time, he kept calling for people to attack Lianping. Bang! 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 Facing the gunmen who were rushing toward him, Lianping's expression was cold. He took a step and jumped 10 meters away. Then, he punched with each step. In the blink of an eye, 4 people had fallen to the ground. All of them were killed with one punch. Bang! Bang! A row of machine guns fired at Li Onping. Too lazy to dodge, Li Onping allowed the bullets to hit him. He lifted a corpse in front of him and threw it at the gunman. One of them was killed instantly, and the rest were rolling on the ground like gourds. Then, he rushed up and punched each of them. Another 5 died. As a result, Li Onping chased after Wright at a leisurely pace. No matter who he met along the way, whoever attacked him, he would directly punch them. If it was not their brains that exploded, their bones would be shattered and their internal organs would be ruptured. In just a short distance of 100 meters, dozens of corpses had fallen under his feet. Blood covered the corridor, making Li Onping look like a demon king. The remaining gunmen also stopped attacking. They all followed beside, Wright in fear, and watched in horror as Li Onping slowly walked toward them. Wright also stopped moving. He knew that in the face of such a monster, there was no chance of success whether he escaped or resisted. "Brother, let's talk nicely. If I've offended you in any way, I'll say sorry. You can ask for anything." Li Onping did not reply. Instead, he instantly increased his speed and rushed in front of Wright like a phantom. Then, before the gunmen could react, their vision turned black. Within 5 meters, Li Onping had absorbed all the souls. They did not appear to be injured, but they were already dead. Absorbing through the air is faster than I imagined. There's almost no difference in speed from absorbing after contact. Black, what about efficiency? Is there any loss? About half of it has been lost. It's half less than absorbing after contact. In the future, if you don't want to waste the souls, you can absorb them when you're dead. Consider it a hidden trump card. Li Onping nodded. He felt power flowing out of his body endlessly. He had just absorbed 2 more ability users. His strength had increased again, reaching 3. 8, 2, 7, and 4. 5. Looking at Wright, who was trembling all over, he slowly said, "Are you Lone Wolf's leader?" Wright looked at Li Onping's murderous look. His legs went soft, and he knelt on the ground. No, I'm only in charge of liaising with the business. Then where's your leader? He went to Black Dragon Mountain. Every month at this time, he has to go there. Seeing Li Onping frown, Wright immediately explained loudly, "I'm not lying to you. I'm not in the same gang as them. I'm not from Inchi. My name is Yi Wenbin. I'm from Xia. They forced me to come here to manage their business. If I don't agree, they'll kill me. I was also forced." "Oh." Li Onping nodded and said, "Wait for me here. I still have to go down." "All right, the people on the lower 2 floors are also your people, right?" "Right," where Yi Wenbin nodded. He could not help but ask, "What are you going down for?" "To kill." Li Onping looked at Yi Wenbin and said, "I'm going to kill all of Lone Wolf's people, one by one." Yi Wenbin felt a chill run down his spine. He took a few steps, but suddenly turned around. Looking at Yi Wenbin's trembling face, he said, "After I kill them all, you won't run away by yourself, right?" "I won't run away. Really, please spare me. Business, it's all business. I've never forced a good girl into prostitution. It's all done by them. I'm just here to do business." Then, ignoring the other party's resistance, struggles, and screams, Li Onping directly broke Yi Wenbin's arms and legs before walking towards the elevator. On this day, screams and gunshots resounded throughout the building. There were even suspected explosions of bombs or grenades. The staff who rented the office downstairs had all escaped. Soon, someone called the police. When the police and the Secret Service arrived late, they could only see corpses and blood all over the floor. Countless Lone Wolf members were twisted into balls and thrown on the ground. The entire 11th and 12th floors were like hell. The only survivors left on the scene were the unconscious Qin Yong and the girl locked up on the 12th floor. The police immediately sent them to the hospital and completely sealed off the information at the scene. Even in Jadeite City, this was the first time such a cruel and terrifying crime scene had happened. If the news spread to the public, it would probably cause a huge riot and have a serious negative impact on social stability. Chapter 43. Inside an office in a certain building. The captain of Jadeite City's Special Task Force, Han Wei, was looking at a document in front of him. Sitting opposite him was another vice captain and #1 fighter, Mo Chuyan. Han Wei put down the document in his hand and sighed. "What do you think?" Mo Chuyan smiled. He let out a long breath and stretched his body, as if he was tired from sitting there. When he saw Han Wei frowning, he smiled and said, "It's no use asking me. Don't you already know the answer in your heart? Just tell me your name, and I will beat up whoever you want me to." How many times have I told you? Political problems can't be solved by fighting and killing. Violence is the last resort and also the worst. Seeing Mo Chuyan's indifference, Han Wei shook his head and said, "Do you think the person who killed Lone Wolf was Li Anping?" Li Anping? He's just a nobody. Even if he was found at the scene, it only means that he's related to the murderer. It's very likely that Xia Laikong took him, as Huang Linjun said. Mo Chuyan said decisively. Among the people who died this time, Liu Haoyan was the only one with a brain problem. He's not worth mentioning. The snake-haired woman, the doppelganger man, and Jiang Chuan are all at the second energy level. It's not easy to deal with a small-scale fight in a city like this. Not to mention the hundreds of fully armed and murderous criminals. It's a bit tricky even for me. But from the evidence at the scene, there's only one murderer. So, this person must be an expert among experts. What's more frightening is that this person killed them all with his bare hands. Either he's a mutated ability user, or his ability is so famous that he's afraid that people will recognize him. If it's the first possibility, then he's at least a third energy level ability user since he can resist bullets with his body. As for the second possibility, it's even more frightening. He killed these people with pure psychic energy and physical strength. This kind of person can't be a nobody. You said you didn't say anything, but you said so much. Mo Chuyan smiled. That's what you asked me. If that's the case, could it really be Xia Laikong? Han Wei muttered to himself. I don't know about that. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. We're in the middle of the game. Mo Chuyan stood up and stretched. However, the people who might be powerful in Jadeite City are not here. As for the south, there are many masters in Baiwei and Fu Luan, but they have no reason to do so. The possibility of them coming is very low. Apart from Xia Laikong, I was more inclined to believe that it was a vendetta that killed so many people without leaving a single survivor. Lone Wolf has offended so many people over the years. It's not surprising that he was destroyed. Han Wei did not answer. He thought to himself, if it was really Xia Laikong who was hiding in the dark and making a move, does this mean that the situation in the north is already so tense? Do we need to reorganize the rear, gather our forces, and prepare for a decisive battle anytime? But why did he have to kill Jiang Chuan? If it was to rectify the situation, they shouldn't have killed their own people, right? Moreover, compared to Lone Wolf, Qilin Group, Violet Orchid, and Loyalty Hall should be a better target. Could it be that someone is investigating human trafficking? Then all the more they shouldn't have killed everyone. It shouldn't be Xia Laikong. Was it really a vendetta? Thinking of this, Han Wei suddenly said, "Wait. Go to Black Dragon Mountain now." Mo Chuyan was just about to walk out of the office when he heard this. He stopped and turned back to look at Han Wei. What's wrong? Who do you want to kill? Wright's body hasn't been found. No matter who killed Lone Wolf, it's very likely that he asked Wright to take him to Black Dragon Mountain to find Kano. Mo Chuyan smiled somewhat excitedly. What do you want me to do? No matter what the reason is, since Lone Wolf is gone and Kano knows too much, we can only give up. But Jiang Chuan can't die in vain. Furthermore, before he died, he went to chase after Li Anping. Thinking up to here, Han Wei smiled savagely and said, Kano knows too much. You kill him. If you meet Li Anping and he's alone, cripple him and capture him. Haha, you're not afraid of Xia Laikong? Or the other people who killed Lone Wolf? Li Anping is suspected of murder. It's only right to capture him and interrogate him. Even if Xia Laikong wants to blame me, I can't say anything, let alone the others. After all, it's fine if Lone Wolf is dead, but even Jiang Chuan is dead. If we don't do something, the others will really think that we're done for. Besides, if Li Anping really went alone, that means that he's been abandoned as well. No matter what, I'm still the captain of Jadeite City's special forces. How can they not give me an explanation for killing my people? At the same time, the situation in Jadeite City had changed. Ordinary people might not know, but some people with power already knew that Lone Wolf had been uprooted and all the members killed. Especially in this battle, both the Hall of Loyalty and the Cheeling Group had suffered casualties. The three major organizations that were already fighting fiercely were now even more at odds with each other. All kinds of conflicts and contradictions could not be stopped. Therefore, all kinds of rumors and gossip flew all over the place. Now, the entire Jadeite City was like a powder keg, ready to explode at any moment. If there was even the slightest mistake, the three major organizations would immediately go to war. The entire Jadeite City had turned into a battlefield. In a private house in Jadeite City, Yi Wenbin was panting. His limbs were broken, so he could only lie on the bed. Liamping was sitting next to him, surfing the internet. The decoration of this house was average. It was an ordinary two-bedroom house. Judging from the layout of the room, there was only one single man living here. However, this man seemed to have been away for a while. Was he on a business trip or on vacation? In any case, this environment was suitable for Liamping, so he temporarily brought Yi Wenbin here. He was searching for information about Lone Wolf on the internet. It was already the next day, but it seemed that the police had completely blocked off all related information. There was no information about the massacre in the building or the auction house. So now, what he needed to consider was whether Lone Wolf's leader knew that his organization had been wiped out by Liamping. If he knew, would he run away? What's your leader's name? What kind of person is he? He turned his head and asked Yi Wenbin on the bed. Hearing this, Yi Wenbin's body trembled. Until now, his face was still pale. Obviously, he was frightened by Liamping's killing methods. Especially with his limbs broken, he was not a tough guy. He immediately replied, "His name is Kano, also from Inchi. He's very short and dark. This person's character is very violent and violent. There was once a disobedient female slave. No, a girl bit his lower body and was thrown into the dog cage to feed the dogs. I'm not asking you about this." Liamping waved his hand and said, "I'll ask one by one. How do you usually contact each other? Where does he usually go?" "He usually contacts me by phone. As long as I make a lot of money every month, he usually doesn't ask too much about my management. Usually, when he comes over, he will ask me for some girls. Most of them don't come back." Yi Wenbin thought about it and said, "As for where he usually lives, I don't know either. After all, I'm not from Inchi. If I'm not of the same mind as them, they can't tell me all the safety issues. I only know that he goes to Black Dragon Mountain every month these few days and doesn't take anyone's contact. Other times, when I know, he usually plays in nightclubs and hotels. Also, he's very lecherous. Basically, every night, there must be a woman to accompany him." Black Dragon Mountain. Liamping's hand tapped the table rhythmically. No one knew what he was thinking. Black Dragon Mountain was a large mountain range located northwest of Jadeite City. Because the entire mountain range looked like a crouching dragon, it was called Black Dragon Mountain. The mountain was surrounded by clouds and mist all year round. The land was barren and there were no special products. Basically, there were no residents nearby. The scenery was also very ordinary, so very few people went up the mountain. Do you know what he goes to Black Dragon Mountain for? Liamping didn't understand why this Kano went to Black Dragon Mountain every month. Black Dragon Mountain was 70 to 80 kilometers away from Jadeite City. There was a round trip every month, and he still had to go up the mountain. Wasn't it very troublesome? And from Yi Wenbin's previous words, this Kano didn't really manage Lone Wolf's business. He just indulged in pleasure, was greedy for money, and was lecherous. Why would such a person go up the mountain and stay for a few days every month? And he didn't let anyone contact him. I don't know. They didn't allow me to ask. Yi Wenbin saw Liamping's dissatisfied look and immediately explained, "No one in the entire company knows." And Kano also didn't allow anyone to ask. "Kano, is he the only one going?" "No, it's not. He always has 4 bodyguards protecting him. It's said that these 4 people were the first to come out of Inchi with him. They were adopted by him since they were young and are all friends who have gone through life and death with him. These 4 people are with him every day. Whatever Kano has to play with or eat, he'll give them the same portion. Hearing this news, Black became happy. For bodyguards, don't worry about letting so few people protect me. There should be at least 2 ability users among them. There's food again. At this speed, we'll have nothing to worry about before long. Liamping asked again, are there any ability users among these 4? No. Since even you have ability users protecting you, I should ask how many ability users are there among these 4, and what are their abilities respectively? Also, does Kano have the ability? I don't know about Kano. As for the other 4 people's abilities, I'm not too sure either. Seeing Liamping stand up, Yi Wenbin was shocked. Wait, let me think, right, I remember now. Chapter 44. There was only one time when a newcomer from a small gang provoked Kano in a nightclub. In the end, he was stabbed to death by one of the bodyguards with a flying needle. Flying needle? Liamping said thoughtfully. It was very difficult to determine what the other party's ability was with flying needles alone. Even ordinary people could do it, especially when the other party had a total of 5 people. In the worst-case scenario, all 5 of them were ability users with unknown abilities. Obviously, this was the most troublesome. Is there anything else in particular? Anything about Kano or his 4 subordinates, as long as you think it's special? To be honest, I don't know much, but he's been asking me for girls more and more recently. Especially recently, he evacuated all the people in a building and personally transported all the girls away. I don't know where he transported them or what he's thinking. After Liamping finished listening, he seemed to be lost in thought. Looks like the stronghold he went to first was the one that Kanua withdrew from. Yi Wenbin said a few more things, but they were not of much use to Liamping. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and said, there used to be a rumor that Kano believed in the shadow cult. He went to Black Dragon Mountain to worship the Black God. This information immediately attracted Liamping's attention, because this was not the first time he had heard this news. He remembered that when he was interrogating the human trafficker driver on the highway, the other party had also said the same thing. Shadow cult. Many people know about it. So, Liamping asked, and do you know where this rumor came from? Is it very widespread? Although no one believed in the shadow cult for decades, the entire Jadeite city believed in the Black God 100 years ago. Later, it was discovered that this cult had living sacrifices and wanted to rebel. The Xia sent troops to wipe out this cult. Even so, there are still many shadow cult ruins, temples, and the like in Jadeite city. Basically, all the locals who are a little older know about this. At this point, Yi Wenbin thought carefully again and said, as for this rumor, it came about when Kano was drunk and bragged to his subordinates that the Black God was very powerful or something. However, the more it spread, the more ridiculous it became. It even went outside and became a lone wolf who abducted girls and killed them for sacrifice. It's too unreliable. After that, Liamping continued to interrogate Yi Wenbin repeatedly, applying what he had learned from the interrogation books. However, this Yi Wenbin was clearly a weakling. Liamping did not even need to put in much effort before he confessed everything. From the looks of it now, Lone Wolf's forces had basically all been wiped out by him. The only ones left were the leader, Kanoa, and his 4 subordinates who were still in the Black Dragon Mountain. After spending about 2 hours, Liamping repeatedly asked Yi Wenbin about the things he wanted to ask, such as the ability, the stronghold, and Yi Wenbin's business. After confirming that there were no omissions, Liamping ignored Yi Wenbin's pleas and brought him out. Black said, you don't want to ask any more questions? If there are really 5 metahumans, you might be tricked and really die. Liamping replied, according to Zhang Chuan and Yi Wenbin's description, I have no problem dealing with second-rank aptitude users. As for the 3rd and 4th levels, he would only know after fighting them. But the enemy's strength was unknown, so this should be normal. Most of the battles between ability users were carried out without knowing each other's abilities, right? Therefore, when participating in a battle between ability users, one must first be prepared to face any unknown ability users. Just like how we dealt with that guy from the auction. Black only smiled. However, it was secretly surprised. Li Onping, this guy's potential. No, it should be his instinct. Is it gradually awakening? It was too shocking. In just a few months, he had become more and more familiar with fighting and killing. I didn't choose the wrong person. It won't take long. Li Onping walked in a parking lot and looked around. He saw a person coming out of a sports car. He smiled, carried Yi Wenbin on his back, and walked towards that person. He even waved his hand to greet that person. The man looked at Li Onping cautiously, but when he saw Li Onping's clothes, he showed a trace of disdain. Li Onping didn't care. He just pretended not to see and walked past him. At the same time, a shadow of his hand passed over the man's back. Li Onping touched the car key in his pocket and smiled. It was just as he thought. His hand was too fast for ordinary people to resist. Even if he took out the thing in his pocket in front of others, they wouldn't know. After the man left, Li Onping took out the car key, opened the door of the sports car, and threw Yi Wenbin to the passenger seat. He then walked to the driver's seat. Hey, you don't have a driving license, right? You could drive like this? Don't worry, I just read some information on the internet. It shouldn't be a problem. Li Onping said, and had already started the car, pulled the handbrake, and changed gears. The sports car slowly went on the road. It was actually quite similar. At least Yi Wenbin at the side couldn't tell that Li Onping was a newbie at all. Obviously, his reflexes and body coordination were already inhuman. After Li Onping got on the road, he waved his hand while driving, took out a phone from Yi Wenbin's pocket, and said to Yi Wenbin, "If you want to contact Kano now, which number should I call?" Yi Wenbin gave a series of phone numbers and asked, "What do you want to do?" "They're on Black Dragon Mountain now. Only the bodyguards will answer the phone. I can't contact Kano." Li Onping didn't say anything. He just dialed the number, then turned on the speaker and said, "Tell them that Lone Wolf was attacked. You escape alone, and ask them to help you. Also, don't say anything unnecessary. I'm listening." As he spoke, the call went through. Yi Wenbin glanced at Li Onping, swallowed, and shouted into the phone, "Hey, is it Lars? I'm being hunted down now." At this time, the sports car was already on the highway. Li Onping maintained a speed of 80 kilometers per hour, neither fast nor slow, and the place he was driving towards was the northwest of Jadeite City, in the direction of Black Dragon Mountain. In a spacious cave in Black Dragon Mountain, there were candles everywhere, and the air was filled with some kind of strange fragrance, making people feel excited just by smelling it. There were also various unknown patterns drawn on the walls of the cave, giving people a creepy feeling under the flickering candlelight. Bai Tingting opened her eyes, and when she saw the environment in the cave again, there was only numbness in her eyes. She hoped so much that everything was just a nightmare. 2 months ago, when she came to a bar with her boyfriend, she didn't know who gave her the wine, but she blacked out. When she woke up again, she was already locked in a dirty and messy prison cell. The cell's window was sealed, and there was a small opening at the door. Every day, someone would send her food through this opening, and it was all leftovers. Bai Tingting would only eat a few mouthfuls when she was very hungry. After a few days, even if she wasn't full, she wouldn't starve to death. There was no distinction between day and night in the prison cell, and other than her, there were a few other girls in the cell, all of whom were kidnapped in the past few days. Until one day, a group of burly men came and raped all of them. Days like this went on for a few days. Those men said things she couldn't understand, ignored her pleas for mercy, and violently pressed them on the bed, repeatedly raped them, and then penetrated their bodies. That period of time was worse than death. In despair, she used her blood to write her name in the prison cell. But later, she knew what real hell was. After dinner, Bai Tingting fainted again, and when she woke up, she was already in this cave. She found herself gagged and tied to an iron pillar. Around her, there were dozens of girls who were all tied up like this. Other than them, there were 5 other men going in and out of the cave, saying things they couldn't understand. These 5 men were very fierce, and once they found out that they were communicating with each other, they would beat them up. But these men rarely raped them. Only the leader, a dark and short middle-aged man, once caught a few girls and humiliated them. Bai Tingting didn't know how long she had been in the cave. It could have been a few hours, or it could have been a few days. Suddenly, she found that the girls around her were taken out one by one. Fear spread in the cave, and the girls exchanged glances with each other, but all they could see was fear and numbness. Finally, Bai Tingting was the only one left in the cave. She was also drugged and moved to a stone platform in another cave. Here, she finally saw the girls in the original cave. Behind the stone platform, their heads were cut off, and one by one, they were inserted into a pole. It wasn't just them. There were hundreds of heads gathered together. These heads seemed to have been carefully taken care of, and none of them had rotted, maintaining their appearance when they were alive. Their mouths were wide open, and their expressions were distorted, either in fear, despair, or resentment. They surrounded a huge black stone statue, and like a terrifying nightmare, it occupied half of the cave. Next, the 5 men on the stone platform once again raped her, and then the remaining 4 men left, leaving only the short leader kneeling in front of the stone statue, chanting an incantation that she couldn't understand, as if he was telling the stone statue something. In the midst of the rustling sound, it seemed that something was about to come out from the shadows of the cave. It was balls of black willow, the wisps, and the flames floated in the air, looking very strange. Under the short man's command, they slowly approached Bai Tingting on the stone platform. Although they were very close, Bai Tingting couldn't feel the slightest bit of heat. Then the short man danced with joy, and then suddenly roared, and those willow, the wisps rushed up and began to burn Bai Tingting's body. Although it was said to be burning, Bai Tingting couldn't feel the heat. She only felt that it was a pair of mouths, nibbling away at her body bit by bit, which was more painful than death. But Bai Tingting could only watch as her body was burned into nothingness bit by bit. Wave after wave of pain assaulted her. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't make a sound. Even fainting and dying became a luxury, until the willow, the wisps burned her body to nothing, leaving only her head. She still didn't die, and a strange force kept her awake, but it was also a fate worse than death. Then the short man laughed strangely, and her head was also inserted into the pole. Bai Tingting felt a huge suction coming from the direction of the stone statue, as if it wanted to suck away her soul. Finally, her vision turned black, and she finally lost consciousness. Chapter 45. In the cave, under the flickering candlelight, the short man, who was also the leader of the lone wolves, Kano, had a gloomy expression. In order to complete the ritual of sacrificing the black god, he had endured for too long and lay low for too long. Finally, he had waited for this day. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Hence, he could not hold back any longer. He ordered all the female slaves in one of the strongholds to be sent over, and then used the cruelest ritual to kill them. Only souls that were tortured, filled with pain, resentment, and fear were the black god's favorite. Originally, it was once a month, and there were only a few girls at a time. However, he completed the last few dozen girls within a month. Hence, the ritual was finally a success. On the black god's stone statue, his eyes emitted endless black light. The black light shone on Kano, and he felt as if his body was filled with something. Endless power burst forth from his body. He had never felt that he could be so strong. Success. Finally success. Kano's face flushed, and he laughed excitedly. I finally have this kind of power. Power. Oh, power. I'm finally no longer immortal. In order to have power, in order to no longer be immortal, in order to have extraordinary power, Kano had really struggled for too long. Now that he had succeeded, he could not help but cheer. A massive amount of psychic force emerged from Kano's body, almost covering the entire cave. It even slowly rushed out of the cave. The 4 subordinates outside the cave were looking at the massive amount of psychic force emerging from a cave. It was filled with malice, causing one's heart to turn cold. It was like the aura from the deepest part of hell. At this moment, their eyes revealed a look of horror. What kind of monster is this? I've never heard of such a thing. It should only be an innate ability, but the Black God's ritual can actually really bestow abilities to humans. The amount of psychic force has already far surpassed the second energy level, the third. No, at this rate of growth, it might have already reached the fourth energy level. The four of them exchanged glances, looking in the direction of the cave in disbelief, as if that was the entrance to the underworld. Inside the cave, Kano's loud laughter finally stopped. At this moment, the Black Godstone statue was no longer emitting light. Feeling the power in his body stop growing, he closed his eyes and slowly felt the changes in his body. Let me see what kind of ability it is. Traces of energy circulated in his body, and inexplicable information flashed through his mind one after another. Waves of madness and bloodlust gushed out from the bottom of Kano's heart. It was not until 10 minutes later that he opened his eyes and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Interesting. Very interesting. At this time, a burly man from outside the cave walked in. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Kanoa furrow his brows. He just waved his hand through the air, and that burly man was sent flying out and crashed into the wall. He spat out a mouthful of blood, looking at Kanoa in disbelief. That attack just now, when was it? Kanoa looked at him and said with a cold snort, "Didn't I say before that you can't come in without my instructions?" For some reason, Kanoa's eyes at this moment made the burly man's heart palpitate indescribably. He replied, "I only dared to come in because I saw that Big Brother's strength had stopped growing. It's a call from the Secret Service. Mo Chioyin is already at the foot of the mountain. He wants to see us." "Oh, as expected, they've been watching me every month. It's a pity that they can't find this cave." Kanoa laughed, and waves of Inchi emanated from his short body. "Bring him here, then." Bring him here? But here?" that burly man asked doubtfully. Bang! Kanoa waved his hand again, and the burly man was sent flying out of the cave directly. Then, with the help of his companions, he climbed up pathetically. Kanoa's voice came from the cave entrance. "Don't make me repeat my orders." Mo Chuyin waited at the foot of the mountain for almost an hour, just as he was getting impatient and was about to make another call. Finally, a burly man with a fierce-looking face walked out of the forest. Mo Chuyin looked at him with narrowed eyes. He knew that this burly man was called Suomi and was one of Kanoa's personal bodyguards. According to the Secret Service's speculation, he should also be an ability user. However, his strength was average, probably between the first and second level. After all, powerhouses with psychokinesis could usually restrain their psychokinesis. Their strength could only be estimated based on their appearance. Suomi waved his hand and did not say much. He scurried into the forest and walked away. Mo Chuyin did not say anything either. He just followed closely behind. Suomi did not go far. When he saw Mo Chuyin coming in, he began to lead the way. The two of them, one in front and one behind, were only 3 to 4 meters apart. They walked in Kanoa's direction just like that. Speaking of which, the Secret Service received money from Kanoa every year. Naturally, they would not give up on monitoring him. They knew that he would come to Black Dragon Mountain every month. However, Black Dragon Mountain was shrouded in fog all year round. It was very difficult to search. The Secret Service had tried to follow Kanoa and his group a few times, but they all ended in failure. In this kind of terrain, unless the other party deliberately slowed down to let you follow, or had an ability user with detection abilities, it was impossible to follow them. The two of them walked step by step in the forest. As time passed, they walked further and further away. Their vision was already covered by fog. They could only see tens of meters away, even if they tried their best. In this kind of environment, even Mo Chuyin was somewhat disoriented. He realized that Suomi was the same. However, the other party would stop to look every few steps. It seemed like there was some kind of marking. It was no wonder. If there were no markings in this kind of place, even they would get lost. And if they used psychic energy to sense the specific direction, at least Mo Chuyin did not have such a wide range of perception. He did not know who had it either. However, psychic energy was related to spirit. If the other party was hostile to him, he would be able to sense it from hundreds or even thousands of meters away. However, he would not be able to sense the specific direction. After walking for about 10 minutes, Mo Chuyin looked at the cave in front of him and suddenly stopped. Suomi, who was in front, seemed to have sensed his stop as well. He also stopped and turned to look at him. Suomi's eyes flickered. "Why did you stop?" It seemed a little dangerous." Mo Chuyin looked at the cave entrance. His eyes were full of mystery. If there were ability users above level 0 here, they would be able to see where Mo Chuyin was standing. If he took another step forward, there would be a large patch of black psychic energy. It was full of malice, looking at Mo Chuyin like a wild beast baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Suomi sneered. "What? You don't dare to come in?" Mo Chuyin smiled. He took a step forward and walked toward the cave. Psychic energy was also a type of energy. Other than enhancing abilities, it also had offensive capabilities from level 3 onwards, especially the energy in the cave. Whether it was quantity or quality, it was clear that the opponent was strong. It could even be a level 4 ability user. However, unlike those amateur ability users, Mo Chuyin was a true warrior. He would never equate the ability level of his opponent with the strength of his opponent. A high-level ability was indeed very powerful. It was a huge advantage. However, strength was not just a matter of level. Physical strength, physical skills, speed, battle experience, special abilities, or weapons could all affect the balance of victory and defeat. However, it was not something that could be measured by ability level alone. Therefore, a battle was never just a matter of who had more psychic energy or a higher ability level. Only those untrained, ordinary people who had turned into ability users would have such a simple idea. Moreover, Mo Chuyin had absolute confidence in his own strength. The expert in the cave looked very strong, but he did not think that he would be defeated. In other words, he was already used to fighting with unknown ability users. Mo Chuyin entered the cave. Suomi followed behind him as if he was afraid that Mo Chuyin would run away. Mo Chuyin did not react to this. The path in the cave was shorter than Mo Chuyin had imagined. After walking for about 50 meters, he saw that the space was gradually getting bigger. There was a faint light shining in from the front. A stone statue appeared before Mo Chuyin's eyes. There was a stone platform in front of the statue. At the moment, a short man was standing in front of the stone platform with his arms crossed. He looked at Mo Chuyin with a playful expression, as if he was admiring his prey. Naturally, he was Kano. Kano's other 3 bodyguards were in the cave. After Mo Chuyin entered, they stood behind Mo Chuyin with Suomi, blocking the way out of the cave. The 4 of them were on guard, eyeing Mo Chuyin fiercely. Unlike Kano, their faces were full of nervousness and scrutiny. The man in front of them was known as the strongest ability user in Jadeite City's Special Task Force. It was said that he alone had the combat power of a team of ace special forces. If it were any other time, Suomi and the other 3 would definitely not dare to have any ideas about him. They would not even have time to escape. However, it was Kano's request now. They could only bite the bullet and do it. Just as the 4 of them were thinking, a murderous aura hit them in the face. "Kano, those girls behind, you better tell me that they're all fake." Mo Chuyin's voice rang in the cave. Unlike before, his voice was so cold that it could freeze the air. When Suomi and the other 3 heard it, they felt their scalps go numb. The hair on their backs stood on end. Mo Chuyin, you come the right time." Kano laughed. Facing Mo Chuyin's terrifying murderous aura and the psychic energy that surged out of his body, Kano acted as if he did not see it. "These heads were all taken down by my son, one by one. Before they died, they kept torturing and humiliating them. Only such souls would satisfy the Black God. Speaking of which, it took a lot of effort." Kano smiled at Mo Chuyin. "However, their deaths were worth it. They gave me the power of a god. Now I die." Mo Chuyin roared angrily and appeared in front of Kanoa. His fist, which was wrapped in layers of ninchi, smashed into Kanoa's face. Kanawa's face was squeezed out of shape by the fist. Then, his head tilted and he was sent flying. At the foot of the Black Dragon Mountain, Li Onping's gaze seemed to penetrate through the heavy rocks, vegetation, and haze to look in the direction of the cave. He seemed to have heard something just now. However, after listening carefully, he could not hear anything. Shaking his head, Li Onping looked at Yi Wenbin, who was in the front passenger seat, and asked, "Is the call still not connected? I'm already at the foot of the mountain." Not yet. I don't know why, but the phone kept ringing, but no one answered. Yi Wenbin was so nervous that his forehead was covered in sweat. He looked at Li Onping as if he was asking for help. Li Onping stopped the sports car and picked up the phone. He dialed the number again, but the phone still rang and no one answered. "If this goes on, I'll have to kill you. Then, I'll get out of the car and go up the mountain to look for them." Don't kill me," Yi Wenbin said in a panic. "I'm useful. You won't be able to find them if you go up alone. They're in a very secretive location on the Black Dragon Mountain. Other than them, no one knows. Moreover, the mountain is covered in fog all year round. It's easy for you to get lost if you go in alone." Again, no one answered. Li Onping sighed and could only call again. After a few tries, all the results were the same. Li Onping was getting impatient. However, other than this phone call, Li Onping had no other way to contact them for the time being. Chapter 46. Inside the cave, dirt flew everywhere and the air exploded. Kano was sent flying and crashed into a pile of rocks. However, before Mo Chuyin could make his next move, for hostile auras came from behind him. Suomi and the other three who were standing behind him earlier were already attacking him. The first to make a move was Suomi. He was the strongest and had the fastest reaction among the four. He had already activated his ability within 5 seconds of Kano being sent flying. With a push of his feet, he charged forward. What was even more shocking was that the muscles on his upper body swelled and tore his clothes apart. Then, he grew thick black hair and his entire head changed shape. His cheekbones were protruding and his hair was thick. He had turned into a half-human, half-beast. He threw a punch at the back of Mo Chuyin's head. This was Suomi's ability, shape-shifting. In this state, his strength and explosiveness were doubled. He was not afraid of pain or death. At the same time, in less than 1 seconds, another person next to Suomi threw a flying needle at Mo Chuyin's back. The flying needle was fast and powerful. It was as powerful as a bullet. What was even more terrifying was that the flying needle did not fly in a straight line. Instead, it flew in an arc under the control of the person, making it difficult to dodge. After the needle and the punch, 2 equally ferocious attacks erupted from behind Mo Chuyin. Within a second, 4 of Kano's bodyguards, who were all aptitude users, launched their attacks at Mo Chuyin at the same time. Mo Chuyin had just turned around at this moment. If an ordinary person were to face such an attack, they would have died before they could even react. However, they were facing Mo Chuyin. He was a powerful aptitude user who was far stronger than them. He had received systematic training and Xia Dragonfinch's training. He did not have any shortcomings. Although Mo Chuyin was furious at Kano's actions, he did not lose his cool. However, before he threw that punch, he had already predicted that the 4 people behind him would attack. Suomi and the other 3 were loyal to Kano. How could they not help when they saw their master being attacked? As the 4 of them attacked, he began to counterattack. Swoosh! Of the 4 attacks, the flying needle was the first to arrive. Although Somi's reaction was faster, it was clear that his speed was far slower than the flying needles. The person controlling the flying needles was called Lar, and he had some ability to control metal. However, he could not change the shape of the metal, nor could he control too much metal. He could only move some small objects. However, when this ability was used on the flying needle, coupled with the throwing technique, it already had an amazing power. Mo Chuyin stretched out his hand to catch the flying needle with his bare hands. Surprisingly, his hand moved at lightning speed and blocked the flying needle before it could reach him. Lar did not expect that someone would actually catch his flying needle with their bare hands. His eyes flashed with a trace of pride. With a thought, the flying needle turned and suddenly slanted upwards towards Mo Chiyun's glabella. He had absolute confidence that even if Mo Chiyun used his ninchi to block his glabella, this needle would still pierce through his brain. His flying needles had once pierced through the glass of a bulletproof car and killed the target. He did not believe that Mo Chiyun's ninchi would have a stronger defense than this. However, in the next moment, his eyes widened in disbelief. He saw Mo Chiyun's hand suddenly increase in speed and catch the flying needle. Lars' heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to let the flying needle escape from Mo Chiyun's hand, a strong force came from Mo Chiyun's hand, and he actually caught the flying needle in his hand. Then, he threw a punch forward to meet Somi's fist. Bang! The half-beast Somi felt his entire body go numb from head to toe. He could only feel that his opponent's fist contained a huge amount of power, and it was as if his body was about to fall apart. His ears buzzed, and he almost suffocated from Mo Chiyun's punch. One had to know that Mo Chiyun only had the body of an ordinary person, while Somi had transformed into a beast. Yet, his strength was not even comparable to Mo Chiyun's in his normal state. Somi knew that he was in trouble after the punch, but it was too late. Mo Chiyun did not give him a chance. He pushed his body and rushed towards Lar. Among the four of them, the one with the flying needle is the most dangerous to me. I'll get rid of him first. That was what Mo Chiyun thought and did. He hid behind Somi and rushed towards Lar. However, a strange look flashed across his eyes. That was because a punch and a kick came from his waist and the back of his head at the same time. They were the two remaining bodyguards, Bezos and Carl. They did not activate their abilities. Instead, they imbued their ninchi into their punches and kicks to Mo Chiyun. Perhaps their abilities were not suitable for battle, or perhaps they were afraid that their abilities would cause accidental injuries. Although they did not use their abilities, their ninchi-imbued fists were enough to kill a person instantly, especially if they hit a vital part of the body. At this moment, Mo Chiyun still did not retreat. He actually allowed the two bodyguards to hit him. He still brought Somi and crashed into Lar, who was shooting the flying needle. Bang! Bang! Even though Mo Chiyun had gathered his ninchi at the back of his head and waist, he was still hit hard by the punches and kicks. His body trembled. However, his charge was still as ferocious as ever. Somi, who was in front of him, was now huge and tall. His upper body muscles had swelled up, and with his thick fur, he was 3 times the size of an ordinary human. Not only did he completely block Lar's vision, he even sealed off his escape routes. It could be said that he had made full use of his opponent's attack. With a loud bang, the 3 of them collided before Lar could react. Then, Mo Chiyun went around Somi, who was lying on the ground, and pointed his finger at Lar's head. Lar fell down and lost consciousness. At this moment, Somi finally recovered. He roared angrily and punched Mo Chiyun with both fists, forcing him to retreat. He stood side by side with the other 2 bodyguards, glaring at Mo Chiyun with bloodshot eyes. The series of attacks and defenses just now were too fast. From the moment Mo Chiyun sent Kano flying, the 4 bodyguards attacked Mo Chiyun one after another, but Mo Chiyun took the opportunity to kill one of them. It only took a few seconds, and the 4 of them only had time to attack once. This was the difference in strength between the 2 sides. They were all ability users, but Mo Chiyun was different from Somi and the other 3 bodyguards who relied on their instincts to fight. Mo Chiyun, who had received Xia Dragonfinch's harsh training, had no shortcomings. Whether it was combat experience, mentality, skills, or physical fitness, Mo Chiyun had been honed for a long time. Even if he did not use his ability, Mo Chiyun could kill Somi and the other 3 bodyguards just by relying on his body and ninchi. However, just as Mo Chiyun was facing off against Somi and the other 2 bodyguards, a round of applause rang out. Clap, 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 clap. In the direction where Kano had been sent flying, the dust and debris that had been sent flying had already dispersed. Kano, who had been sent flying, was standing there unscathed. There was no trace of injury on him from head to toe. He looked at Mo Chioyan and laughed. Not bad. Looks like your ability is super strong physical fitness. Mo Chioyan also looked at him coldly. The murderous aura on his body was getting stronger. It's just some martial arts. Ability is important, but the training of the body is also essential. I've seen too many people like you who rely on your ability and don't work hard to train. Your bodies are not much stronger than an ordinary person's. I'll kill you one by one, slowly, but only you. Kano, only you. I won't let you die. I'll chop off your limbs and put you in a cesspool. I'll make you regret living in this world forever. Ha ha. Kanuo opened his eyes wide. His eyeballs were already bloodshot at an unknown time. Why? Because of those girls? Haha, let me count. I've used 999 girls to pay tribute to the Black God. However, I'm also in the business of raising funds. I've captured many girls to sell. Your Desia's girls are very easy to sell. Didn't I give you a share of the money? Ha ha ha. In the end, you can kidnap and sell them, but you can't torture and kill them. What a hypocritical police officer. You don't understand how powerful I am now. Kano looked at Mo Chioyan. As he spoke, waves of brutal and ferocious aura kept surging out from his body. He continued, you guys get out. Leave him to me. But Suami and the other two were stunned. They wanted to object. Although Kano's aura was astonishing, he was only an ordinary person in the past. After exchanging blows with Mo Chioyan earlier, they deeply understood how terrifying he was. He had killed one of them without using any ability. This kind of ability was too shocking. Scram! Faced with the trio's hesitation, Kano frowned and waved his hand. The three of them were swept out by a wave of energy. They had no ability to resist at all. They were thrown out of the cave as if he was swatting flies. Seeing this, Mo Chioyan's eyes narrowed. He had wanted to chase after the trio, but he stopped. You guys wait outside. I'm going to use him to test how powerful I've become. After saying that, Kano flashed a cruel smile at Mo Chioyan. Are you ready to welcome hell? At the foot of the mountain, Li Onping was still calling on his phone out of boredom. However, no matter how many times he called, the other party's phone remained unanswered. This made him more and more impatient. Beside him, Yu Wenbin's face was also pale. Half of it was from the pain of his broken limbs, and the other half was from seeing Li Onping's impatient expression. He was getting more and more nervous. He was not even willing to say a word now, afraid that he would draw fire and attract the other party's attention. He could only pray in his heart, praying that the call would go through quickly. Why do you think they won't pick up the phone? Li Onping asked Yu Wenbin. Yu Wenbin's face twitched. He hesitated and said, could it be because they're on silent mode? It's possible. Li Onping nodded and said, does it hurt? He pointed at Yu Wenbin's hands. It's all right. Both his hands and feet had been broken by Li Onping. Almost a day had passed, and they were already swollen. Just looking at them was painful. However, Yu Wenbin was indeed the person Kano sent to manage Lone Wolf's business. He had some perseverance. Faced with this kind of pain, although his face was pale, he endured it. However, he was afraid of angering many parties and did not dare to make too many requests. He only hoped that after helping Li Onping lure Kano out, the other party would let him live, even if he knew that this hope was slim. When Li Onping heard Yu Wenbin's answer, he nodded and said, besides being on silent mode, there's another possibility. It's that he deliberately didn't pick up or threw the phone away. As for them, they've already escaped. Ah, Yu Wenbin exclaimed, looking at Li Onping worriedly. After all, whether or not he could lure Kano and his party was related to his survival. Actually, apart from this, I'm more suspicious that it's related to the Secret Service team. They're colluding with each other. Since the police and the Secret Service team both know about Lone Wolf, and they've even taken Lone Wolf's money, combined with the fact that they sent Jiang Chuan to stop me, it's very likely that Kano has already been taken away by the Secret Service team before me. Or perhaps he'll be silenced? I'll call again. If no one picks up again, there's really no other way. I can only go back to Jadeite City, find the Secret Service team directly, and force them to call him out. However, just as Li Onping finished calling again, a different voice came over. The subscriber you've dialed is turned off. Please try again later. Turn off? Did they destroy the phone? Or is there another reason? Before Lianping could figure it out, a burst of fire shot up into the sky from the direction of Black Dragon Mountain. Chapter 47. Lianping looked in the direction of the Black Dragon Mountain. There was a beam of fire shooting up into the sky, and the red flames dyed the clouds red. Large patches of fog were also dispelled. Thick black smoke shot up into the sky. Clearly, there was a huge fire going on there. Fire? Coincidence? Or? Lianping thought of this and suddenly glanced at Yi Wenbin beside him. Then, under Yi Wenbin's confused gaze, he struck his neck with his palm and knocked Yi Wenbin out. Anyway, let's go take a look first. Lianping got out of the car and charged toward the Black Dragon Mountain after identifying the direction of the fire. His footsteps were extremely fast, and his eyes were fixed on the direction of the fire. After memorizing the direction, he smelled the smoke and heard the sounds. The trees and fog could not stop him at all. With a single step, he had already covered a distance of more than 10 meters. In the cave, 10 minutes ago, Kano waved his hand at Mo Chuyin, and Mo Chuyin felt a huge force coming toward him. It was as if a big hammer had smashed into his chest, and he was forced to retreat more than 10 steps. He only stopped when he spat out a mouthful of blood. Mo Chuyin looked at his opponent in disbelief, and the situation just now flashed through his mind. He did not understand how his opponent had attacked him. He did not see any weapons, and Kano did not get close to him. He did not even touch him with his hands. Just like how he had sent Suomi flying earlier, he had hit him with a wave of his hand. It's psychokinesis. When Kano waved his hand, he only hit me with psychokinesis. It's very simple, very violent, just like a child's method of squandering his psychokinesis. Looking at the endless stream of psychokinesis coming out of his opponent, as if there was no limit, Mo Chuyin was also shocked. But what's with this level of psychokinesis? This is already the amount of psychokinesis that a fourth energy level can achieve. Could he? A hint of panic appeared in Mo Chuyin's eyes. Ka, on the other hand, waved his hand nonchalantly. His chi was like countless hands, smashing Mo Chuyin here and there. Then, Mo Chuyin was like a ball being hit by Kano nonstop. In the face of this kind of attack, Mo Chuyin could only passively defend. He tried his best to curl up his body and cover his body with psychic energy. Every time Kanoa's psychic energy hit him, he would gather his psychic energy on the part of his body that was about to be hit. Therefore, even though Mo Chuyin looked like he was being beaten up badly, other than the first punch, the other attacks that Mo Chuyin received did not cause him any serious injuries. Even in the face of his opponent's overwhelming mental strength, Mo Chuyin had no intention of giving up or escaping. He was still calmly analyzing his opponent's situation and looking for an opportunity to win. I blocked it. After all, it's a pure psychic attack. Although there's a lot of it, and my psychic energy isn't enough to cover my entire body to block it, as long as I can predict the path of his attack, I can gather my psychic energy to block it. Kano was just an ordinary person before, after all. He lacked experience in fighting with ability users. I can win against him. Thinking of this, Mo Chuyin blocked Kanoa's psychic attacks while cleverly making use of the force from his opponent's attacks to get closer to Kanoa. However, just as he was getting closer to his opponent, Kanoa stopped. Mo Chuyin looked at Kanoa cautiously, not knowing what his opponent was planning. If Kanoa has really reached the fourth energy level, I must kill him before he masters his ability. However, my ability can only be used when I'm close to him. I must think of a way to get closer to him. However, at this moment, he saw Kano suddenly tilt his head and say slowly, I don't think I can kill you with pure psychic energy. But that's fine too. I'll try my fist and leg techniques. Saying this, his tone became excited and violent. Clenching his fists, he slowly walked towards Mo Chuyin. Good chance. He actually wants to fight in close combat. However, halfway through his thoughts, Mo Chuyin suddenly realized that Kanoa had disappeared from his sight. He immediately realized that he had been distracted for a moment in the middle of a battle because he had suddenly encountered the opportunity he wanted. This momentary distraction had exposed a fatal flaw. This flaw was enough to be the key to victory in a battle between experts. Kanawa had obviously grasped this flaw. His voice came from behind Mo Chuyen's head. Cold sweat dripped down Mo Chuyen's forehead. "Where are you looking?" It was too late to turn around, and it was too late to counterattack. At the last moment, Mo Chuyen could only desperately dodge forward, while his psychic energy kept gathering behind him. Boom! Like a flash flood or a volcano erupting, an earth-shattering force came from Mo Chuyen's back, sending his entire body flying into the mountain wall. One after another, rumbling sounds could be heard. It was as if there was thunder. When Mo Chuyen came back to his senses, intense pain had already spread all over his body. Kanawa's punch had sent him flying a full 5 meters into the mountain wall. If he had not used all his psychic energy to cover the area in front of him at the last moment, he might have been smashed to death. At this moment, Kanawa's voice came faintly into his ears. "Take this as a greeting. If I find out that you're distracted during a battle with me next time, I'll kill you directly." Mo Chuyen was shocked. Freak thing. He tried his best to get up, sweeping away the rocks on his body. However, the intense pain made him shiver uncontrollably. "Damn it, my ribs are broken. I definitely can't take another punch from him." Kanoa looked at Mo Chuyen, who had climbed out of the mountain wall, and smiled cruelly. "Then let's continue." There was a bang under Kanoa's feet. Rocks flew everywhere, leaving only a small pit. He had already appeared right in front of Mo Chuyen, throwing a punch straight at him. Mo Chuyen was fully focused this time. Although Kanoa's movements were faster than he had imagined, he still saw it. Looking at his opponent's fist, he also raised his own psychic energy-wrapped fist and threw it at his opponent with all his might. The sound of fists colliding kept ringing in the cave. Mo Chuyen stood where he was. Kanawa's shadow kept flashing in all directions around him. His opponent's speed was too fast. He could only stand where he was to catch his opponent's fist. Fortunately, Kanoa did not have as much experience as Mo Chuyen. He only threw a few punches back and forth. Mo Chuyen could still rely on his rich experience to block them. For a moment, both of them were attacking at lightning speed. They were actually evenly matched. In just a few seconds, both of them had already exchanged dozens of punches. Mo Chuyen could still hold on at first, but his opponent's stamina seemed to be endless. Soon, he began to feel awkward, panting heavily. His strength was also gradually decreasing. However, Kanoa did not change at all. Instead, with each punch, his speed became faster and faster, and his technique became more and more skilled. He relied on his speed, that was faster than Mo Chuyen's, to completely suppress his opponent. Just when Mo Chuyen was about to collapse from his opponent's heavy punches, Kanoa snorted coldly. He threw a punch and used the force to fly back a few steps. He looked at his hands. They were actually emitting wisps of white smoke. A burnt smell was coming out. Both of his fists had been charred, and he had already lost all feeling in them. Then, he looked at Mo Chuyen's red hands. He showed an interested expression. "This is your ability? You can make your hands emit heat? It's about 200 degrees, right?" Seeing that Kanoa had stopped and his burnt hands, Mo Chuyen finally breathed a sigh of relief. He did not answer his opponent's question about his ability. He was not a newbie who would introduce his ability to others. "I'll take your life while you're sick." With a cold laugh, Mo Chuyen rushed up and threw a punch at Kanoa's chest. However, his opponent dodged it. Then, the air around his fists was distorted. Wave after wave of high temperature came out from his fists. When Kanoa dodged the second punch, he missed it by a little. Mo Chuyen's hands brushed against him, and a large burn appeared on his chest. Then, Mo Chuyen threw a few more punches. Kanoa kept dodging, but he realized that he missed it by a little each time. After a few punches, the places on his body that were hit all gave off a burnt smell, like pork that was being roasted. Kanoa exclaimed softly and retreated quickly. When he was about 10 meters away from Mo Chuyin, he suddenly jumped up and stepped on the top of the cave upside down. His feet stepped into the rocks on the top of the cave, and he looked at Mo Chuyin while hanging upside down. The high temperature affected the air and caused a visual error. Looks like you're very confident in close combat. Seeing that Mo Chuyin had no intention of answering, Kanua curled his lips indifferently. If it's high temperature, I need my body to be more resistant to heat. I don't have enough strength. I need to be stronger to break through your defense. Mo Chuyin looked up and frowned at Kanua, who was above his head, as he muttered to himself. However, the scene that came down scared him again. Kanua's body was actually growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. From the original appearance of 1.6 meters, he directly grew to 1.8 meters. The muscles on his body bulged out one by one, bursting the clothes on his upper body, revealing large chunks of muscles. His head had also grown a little bigger. There were even 2 small bumps on his forehead. However, what was more terrifying was his hands. His hands that were almost cooked by the fire had pieces of rotten flesh falling off. New granulation grew rapidly, filling up the wounds on his hands. In the blink of an eye, not only were the wounds on Kanua's hands healed, but they also looked much stronger than before. A pressure that was several times stronger than before came from the top of Mo Chuyin's head. Mo Chuyin could not help but say through gritted teeth, "What kind of monster are you?" "I'm not a monster. It's the power of God." Kanua laughed maniacally. "With the power of God, I'm invincible." The next moment, the wind howled. Kanua appeared in front of Mo Chuyin with a bang. Then he threw a punch. The wind brought by the punch was so strong that Mo Chuyin could barely open his eyes. His strength was more than twice as strong as before. This time, Mo Chuyin threw out a punch as well. All the psyche in his body was concentrated on his fist, and his ability was unleashed to the maximum. Visible distortions appeared on his fist. This was a refraction phenomenon caused by the high temperature affecting the air. The temperature of his hands had exceeded 300 degrees Celsius. Boom! 2 pairs of fists collided. The tremendous force collided and pressed against each other. A second later, Kanua was motionless, but Mo Chuyin was already sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair, and his arm was twisted. Kanua's punch just now had already fractured the bones in his hand. Mo Chuyin, who was on the ground, tried his best to straighten his body. He looked at Kanua. What made him despair was that Kanua's body was not injured at all. He did not even look tired. The fist that should have been burned by him was only smoking slightly. "Are you surprised? Why am I not burned this time?" Kano revealed a mocking expression. "The same trick, how could I fall for it again? When I repair my hands just now, I've already made a layer of insulating cuticle on the skin of my hands. Your ability already can't do anything to me." If one were to zoom in on Kanua's hands now, one would see that the outermost layer of the cuticle had many gas pores. Through the circulation of the gas, it would take away heat. Moreover, even if the outermost layer of the cuticle was burned, he only needed to peel off a layer of skin and grow it again. How is that possible? Mo Chuyin stared at Kanua as if he could not believe what he was saying. Nothing is impossible. Kanua walked slowly to Mo Chuyin and looked at him proudly. "Officer, I've told you that you don't know what you're fighting against. I have the power of God. I'm invincible. I have no weaknesses. I'll only become stronger." As he spoke, Kanua grabbed Mo Chuyin's hand and allowed him to activate his ability. "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have tried this modification so quickly. As a reward, try your best and see if you can hurt me." Mo Chuyin roared. Wave after wave of high temperature came from Mo Chuyin's hand and passed it to Kanua's hand. However, it was useless. Even if the temperature was over 300 degrees Celsius, it could not hurt Kanua at all. The body, standing in front of Mo Chuyin, was no longer human. Chapter 48. Looking at Kanua's unscathed body, Mo Chuyin's eyes were solemn. "Kanua, now that things have come to this, I have to kill you. Letting a monster like you live will be a huge threat to Jadeite City. I want to kill you here." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Kanawa looked at him with disdain and mockery. Mo Chuyin stopped talking. Faced with overwhelming power, he calmly accepted the fact that his opponent was powerful and made up his mind to destroy him, even if he had to sacrifice his own life. Mo Chuyin roared and pounced toward Kanawa, who was in front of him. With a poochie sound, Kanawa's reaction was very quick. At the instant Mo Chuyin charged over, a punch had already pierced through his chest. However, Mo Chuyin did not react. He let Kanawa punch through his chest and only hugged Kanawa tightly. "Are you here to die?" Just as Kanawa was puzzled, he realized that Mo Chuyin's entire body had turned red and was emitting waves of heat as if he was being cooked. "I see. Not only your hands, but your entire body can emit heat. But so what?" Kanawa smiled and did not struggle out of Mo Chuyin's embrace. He said calmly, "I can change the structure of my entire body. Even if my entire body is attacked by heat, I'll be fine. You're just wasting your effort." Mo Chuyin only hugged Kanawa tightly and said nothing. He knew that Kanawa was right. The skin on his body kept falling off and growing. Soon, it was replaced by a layer of heat insulation. In this way, although Mo Chuyin's body temperature was high, it could not burn him. Perhaps it would be fine if it lasted longer. However, Mo Chuyin's ability was not without limits. Maintaining a high temperature for a long time was a huge burden for him. Thinking of this, Mo Chuyin no longer hesitated. A large amount of psychic energy gushed out of his body. Then, his body temperature rose again. He was actually using psychic energy to strengthen his ability. Visible to the naked eye, Mo Chuyin's entire body was emitting white steam. That was the result of his body temperature rising rapidly, even exceeding the limits of his ability. It caused a large area of his body to be burned and a large amount of water evaporated. "Are you crazy? Let go." Kano felt it at the first moment. The insulating layer on his skin could no longer resist the high temperature. His blood and body fluids were almost boiling in an instant. The high temperature instantly spread throughout Kano's body. His body reached the burning point immediately. His fat and muscles turned into fuel, igniting Kano into a human-shaped torch. "You lunatic!" Looking at Mo Chuyin's haggard face under the high temperature, Kanawa cursed. He frantically hit Mo Chuyin, who was hugging him. But no matter how hard he tried to drag him away, the other party just held on to him tightly. As his body continued to burn, Kano's strength gradually decreased. "Leader." When the three people outside the cave heard Kano's screams, their faces were filled with panic. Just as they were about to rush into the cave, a gust of psyche chi hit them in the face and sent them flying again. Suomi's phone was also destroyed in the collision. Scram! Then, a large ball of fire flew past them and fell into the forest in the distance, burning fiercely. And after the light of the fire, the Kanawa in a sorry state also walked out of the cave. In the eyes of Suomi and the other two, Kanawa could no longer be called a human. His entire body was burned in large areas. His skin was completely charred, revealing pieces of muscle and white bones. His face looked more like a skeleton than a human. The skeleton's mouth moved as if it wanted to say something, but it realized that its tongue and vocal cords had been burned long ago. It could not speak. Kanawa made an angry gesture and let out a soundless roar. He suddenly charged into the forest where the light of the fire had fallen. In the forest, Mo Chuyin was like a dried corpse. Moreover, his entire body was covered in injuries. Not only did Kanawa break one of his arms and penetrate his chest, but when he was hugging Kanawa, the other party had hit him, thrown him, and twisted him around. Right now, his body was in tatters. He could not even stand up. The high temperature of his body was gradually decreasing, but the surrounding forest was still burning. In the flames, Kanawa's zombie-like figure suddenly appeared before them. He looked at Mo Chuyin and gave him an ugly smile. Looking at the other's hand that was slowly reaching toward him, Mo Chuyin thought, "Did I fail? This monster, even this can't burn him to death?" Then, his vision went black. Kanawa had already twisted his head off. Kanawa let out a soundless roar at the sky. Then, he smashed Mo Chiyun's head into smithereens. Then, he looked at Mo Chiyun's almost charred body on the ground. With a few stomps, he tore the other's corpse into pieces. Outside the forest, the three people looked at Kanua's crazed appearance. Coupled with Kanua's monster-like appearance now, they were as silent as cicadas in winter. The three of them looked at each other. For the first time, they felt a hint of regret about Kanua obtaining his ability. A few minutes later, when Kanua walked out of the burning forest again, his zombie-like appearance frightened Somi and the other two. They could not help but take a step back. Boss, are you all right? Somi called out boldly. But no matter how he looked at it, it did not look like he was all right now. Kanua waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. He walked up to the three of them and looked at them strangely. No one knew what he was planning. Suomi and the other two looked at each other. In the end, it was Suomi who said boldly, "Boss, what are you going to do now? You can't speak? Why don't you write it on the ground?" Kanua reached out his hand to stop Suomi from speaking. He looked at the other three. Half of his head had turned into a skeleton. He stared straight at Carl and Bezos with a strange light in his eyes. In the end, he raised his finger at Carl, indicating for him to come over. Carl's heart skipped a beat. He felt that being stared at by Kanua right now was like being stared at by a ferocious beast. He looked at the other two. Although Carl felt that it was very strange, his habit of working under Kanua all these years still urged him to walk over. Carl looked at Kanua's zombie-like skull and asked, "Boss, what's the matter?" He was at a loss. Kanua moved his mouth, but no sound came out. Then, he raised his hand and waved it forcefully. Bang! Carl's head flew up into the sky, leaving the headless corpse standing on the ground. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. Even when his head fell to the ground, he still had a stunned expression on his face. Kanua had already pounced on the corpse. He bit and sucked on the wound on the corpse's neck. "Boss, what are you doing?" "Carl." Suomi and Bezos were both shocked and furious. They looked at Kanua, who was lying on Carl's body, in disbelief. Kanua had no intention of answering their questions at all. He just kept lowering his head and sucking on the blood flowing out of the corpse. Then, Suomi and Bezos saw a terrifying scene. As Kanua kept sucking on the blood, flesh grew on his body again. His injuries gradually recovered, and his skull returned to its original appearance. In less than a minute, when Kanua wiped the blood off his mouth and stood up, he already looked unscathed. No, he was stronger than before. His body had been reconstructed once again, becoming more suitable for battle. The two small bumps on his head had disappeared, and instead, two small horns had grown out. The muscles on his arms and torso had become stronger, and his face had also become younger and more demonic. The current Kanua was no longer the same as before. Feeling the surging power in his body after sucking the blood, he laughed out loud. When he was burned half to death just now, he was worried that he was really done for. Who knew that even though more than half of his body was burned, his strength didn't weaken much, and his movements weren't affected at all. After he crushed Mo Chiyun's bones and scattered his ashes in a fit of rage, he was attacked by waves of hunger. This feeling became especially strong when he saw Suomi and the other two. In the end, when he couldn't hold it in anymore, he killed Carl and drank his blood. Then, his injuries recovered at an unimaginable speed. He even felt that his body was stronger than before. Ever since he got the ability, the tyrannical feeling that he always had weakened a lot. He became rational again. Kanua looked at the forest that was burning more and more fiercely. He suddenly took a deep breath and then waved his palm toward the forest with all his might. Boom! Like a typhoon passing through, the airflow created by merely waving his arm actually directly blew down a large area of the forest. What was even more frightening was that under the frightening wind, the flames that were still burning fiercely just now were extinguished in one breath. Clenching his fists, Kanua looked at Suomi and the other two who were like frightened birds. He smiled evilly and said, "Don't worry. It was an emergency just now. I won't eat you. Let's go." He waved his hand and walked toward the forest. Suomi and the other two behind him looked at each other. They only felt a chill coming from their backs. They could only brace themselves and follow. On the other side, the fire attracted Li Onping's attention. After he knocked Yi Wenbin unconscious, he rushed into the forest. After a few hundred meters, he encountered a thick fog. However, he didn't hesitate at all and plunged into the fog. Relying on his amazing memory and sense of direction, he rushed toward the direction of the fire in his memory. No matter what terrain it was, it couldn't stop him at all. He climbed mountains and jumped off cliffs. As long as he confirmed the direction in advance, a mere thick fog could not stop Li Onping at all. The current him, regardless of whether it was strength, speed, perception, smell, touch, or sense of direction, reaction time, and memory, they all already far surpassed ordinary people's freaks. Taking a deep breath and smelling the burnt stench coming from the air, he understood that he was approaching his target. However, what he didn't know was that because he walked in a practically straight line, completely ignoring the terrain, even though he walked very quickly, he instead missed Kanua's party, who took a detour according to the marks. Hence, Kanua and Li Onping's two sides did not meet. When Li Onping arrived at the cave entrance, he could only see the destroyed forest. Is it Kanua? Looking at the way this forest is destroyed, did someone fight here just now? Li Onping crouched down and observed the destroyed trees on the ground. Chapter 49. Other than the trees that were blown away, Li Onping also saw some trees that had been burned by flames. Is it a flamethrower, or someone with the ability to spit fire? Li Onping could not be sure. He continued to walk forward, and soon saw Carl lying at the entrance of the cave. His head has been twisted off. Li Onping looked at Carl's headless body and suddenly felt a sense of familiarity in his eyes. Such a violent method of killing was exactly what he often used. But in the next moment, Li Onping frowned. He saw that there were bite marks on Carl's neck. It reminded him of some bad memories. Black, what do you think? Looking at the wounds, Li Onping could not help but ask Black. You're not the only one in the world who eats people. Some people have killed too many people and have psychological problems. It's normal. Black paused, and then its tone changed. But this place does give me a sense of familiarity. Go into that cave and have a look. Li Onping nodded. That cave looked so suspicious. Even without Black's reminder, he had planned to go in and have a look. But what he did not know was that Black's thoughts about this place were not as simple as just being familiar with it. So Li Onping carefully entered the cave, completely opening up his hearing, touch, and smell to guard against any possible attacks. If this is really Kano's place, did someone attack him? Who could it be? Li Onping carefully searched the cave while thinking calmly. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as the cave became wider. A large hall appeared in front of him, causing his anger to soar once again. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He saw the stone statue of Black God and hundreds of girls' heads around the statue. There was a stone platform in the middle of the hall. There were still fresh bloodstains on it, as if someone had just been tortured on it. He also found Lar's body on one side of the cave. On the other side of the hall was a prison cell, full of bloody iron pillars and chains. Although his heart was filled with anger, Li Onping still carefully checked all the places. By now, he could basically confirm that this was the place where Kanua came every month. It seemed that the girls he brought out every time were all brought here as blood sacrifices in the end. Just now, this place seemed to have been attacked, and 2 people had died. Meanwhile, Kanua vanished without a trace. Li Onping stood in front of the stone statue, looking at the hundreds of heads of the young girls who still maintained fear, hatred, and despair as if they were still alive. The flames in his heart burned hotter and hotter. He exhaled deeply and slowly raised his fist. At this moment, Black suddenly said, "Wait, what's wrong? I want to destroy this place." "No, nothing." For some reason, Black did not say anything else. Although Li Onping could feel that Black was hiding something from him, he did not care. All he wanted to do now was to vent. His fist landed heavily on the stone statue, but his body of flesh and blood was like a raging storm. With just one punch, the stone statue was smashed into pieces. Li Onping swept out of the cave like a gale. Behind him, the entire cave had turned into ruins amidst a series of collapsing noises. Everything inside was also completely buried. Kanoa, I want to tear you to shreds. Tyrannical power filled Li Onping's body and mind. Even if the entire cave was destroyed, it did not disappear in the slightest. On the contrary, it expanded and brewed. Why was there so much evil in the world? Why was the world so filthy? It was because there were people like Kanoa, people like Shang Jinbong, that had no right to live. I want to behead all the evil in the world. I want to kill him. A shocking murderous aura emerged from Li Onping's body. His eyes became like red gems. Qi also emerged from his body, weak but firm. Qi was originally the unity of the body and the soul. When the spirit or the body changed, the Qi would also change. Therefore, every ability user's Qi was unique. And now, under the stimulation of Li Onping's spirit, his Qi also produced subtle changes. Where is he? Black reminded, you can use your nose to smell. Not just hearing, your 5 senses should be far superior to ordinary people. Nose? Li Onping took a deep breath and smelled a lot of scents. There were human scents, animal scents, and even plants. But there was one smell that was the most intense. That evil smell was like a feast, giving Li Onping a fatal temptation. This is Kanoa's smell? What a familiar smell. Black answered, eat it, eat it, eat it. You must go and eat it. At this moment, although Black could not recall where he had smelled a similar smell, his intuition and experience accumulated over thousands of years told him that as long as he ate Kanoa, he and Li Onping would become even stronger and more terrifying. Li Onping also felt the power in his body becoming restless, as if he could not wait to find Kanoa. Then let's go. Go and kill him. Li Onping's figure disappeared in an instant. A second later, the ground where his feet had been stepped on cracked, as if a giant had stepped on it. The entire ground caved in, leaving behind a huge pit. What he did not notice was that right in the collapsed cave, the stone statue's head suddenly turned. Its eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, looking at the direction Li Onping had left through the mountain rocks. Its eyes revealed a trace of doubt and fear. A moment later, the entire head statue was silent again, as if nothing had happened. Kanoa's group of 3 were all ability users and had made marks. Although they did not have Li Onping's ability to walk in a straight line based on intuition, they were still very fast. When Li Onping arrived at the cave, they had also walked to the foot of the mountain. Looking at the unconscious Yi Wenbin in the sports car, Kanoa rubbed his chin, thinking about something. Originally, I gathered everyone in the building and withdrew my power to decide the next step after I obtained my ability. However, since Yi Wenbin appeared here, it means that the situation in the city has changed. After saying that, Kanoa turned to look at Suno leader. My phone seems to have been broken just now. I haven't been able to contact our people. I don't know what's going on. Then ask him, Kanoa said with his neck tilted. Then, the 3 of them got into the sports car. Bezos drove, while Kanoa sat in the passenger seat. Suomi sat in the back and asked Yi Wenbin. The moment Yi Wenbin woke up, he was shocked. He thought that Li Onping had been killed. Seeing Suomi in front of him, he immediately realized that this was a moment of life and death. What's going on? Why are you here? Suomi asked. Yi Wenbin knew that his injuries could not be hidden, and they would find out about the building sooner or later. There was only one thing he could hide now. As long as Suomi did not know that he had told so many things to Li Onping, he should be fine. The headquarters was attacked. All the brothers are dead. It was a man who did it. He brought me to Black Dragon Mountain to find you. His words made Suomi and Bezos turn pale with fright. But Kanoa's face was calm, as if he was not the leader of the lone wolves. No wonder Mo Chuyen came back to find us. He's here to silence us. Leader, let's run away quickly. Entering Jadeite City now is walking right into a trap. Kanoa did not react. He just turned his head and asked Yi Wenbin, do you know who the man who attacked us is? Yi Wenbin looked at the demonic man in front of him in surprise. It seemed that he could not believe that he was Kanua, but Suomi called him leader just now. There was no time for him to think. He answered subconsciously, I don't know who he is, but he went up the mountain to find you guys just now. Suddenly, Yi Wenbin was stunned. His eyes were blank and gradually lost their luster. Meanwhile, Kanua stretched out his finger from Yi Wenbin's skull and placed it by his mouth, licking it. Mo Chuyen? Unfortunately, he's already dead. Kanua smacked his lips and said, It seems to have no effect at all. It seems that only the blood of ability users is useful. It can make me even stronger. He thought that the one who attacked the headquarters was Mo Chuyen, who went up the mountain just now. He tested the effect of an ordinary person like Yi Wenbin in passing. In the end, eating was equivalent to eating nothing. Hearing the latter half of Kanua's words, Suomi and Bezos only felt chill. Kanua did not mind. He continued, Go directly to Jadeite City. Go to Loyalty Hall to find Lu Jun. You should have quite a lot of ability users there. Hearing that, Suomi braced himself and advised, But there are many experts in Loyalty Hall. Their local power is deeply rooted, and now the people from the Special Task Force are also looking for us. Mo Chuyen even took the initiative to come find us. Leader, we'd better plan at length. You don't understand. Kanua shook his head. So me, I'm very strong. The current me is very strong. Strong enough to secretly rule the entire Jadeite city. And as time passes, I'll get stronger and stronger. Before long, I'll surpass Ya Lycong to Xia Dragonfinch, Ice Fortress Fire Dragon Vanguard, and even that lunatic Demir Tanner. I'll have the power to destroy planets. So let's go find Lu Jun Violet, Cheeling Group, and the Special Task Force don't matter. They'll only become my food. Suomi listened to Kanua's words in a daze, not knowing what to say. Seeing him like this, Kanua shrugged and said, You guys are too slow. He looked at the sports car, driving more than 100 kilometers per hour on the highway, and said, Too slow. I can't wait any longer. You guys should go by yourselves. A bloodthirsty glint flashed in his eyes. I'll give you the signal. Saying that, he opened the car door and leaned his upper body out. Are you crazy? Do you want to be hit to death? The driver behind saw this and immediately honked and cursed. Kanua looked at the driver of the car behind the sports car and cracked a smile. Then he jumped out. Boom! With one foot on the hood of the car behind him, he watched as the car slowly deformed under his impact. The driver's expression was one of terror. Kanua laughed maniacally and exerted force with his foot. His entire body flew forward. Meanwhile, the car that he had stepped on was instantly squeezed into a ball by the impact. It collided with the car behind it, causing a chain accident. Chapter 50. At the same time, dozens of people were sitting face-to-face in a meeting room that was over 1,000 square meters in size. The atmosphere was tense. An old man wearing a short-sleeved shirt and a golden necklace said slowly, I've called you all here today to mediate the conflict. If this continues, we won't be able to do business anymore. Peace breeds wealth. The one who spoke was Uncle Chi. He was one of the older generation's leaders in Jadeite City. He was also an elder of the Loyalty Hall. At the moment, other than the people from the Loyalty Hall, there were also people from the Violet and Kieran groups in the meeting room. In Jadeite City, the three major forces of the common people were gathered together. Who knew that as soon as Uncle Chi finished speaking, a man sitting next to him would speak. This man looked very fat. His face was oily and sweating profusely. At this moment, his face was ashen as he roared. If you want to make peace, call out the murderer who killed my son first. Otherwise, no way. He was the eldest brother of the Loyalty Hall, Lu Haoyan's father, Lu Jun. After learning about his son's death, he was extremely agitated. He was like an active volcano that could erupt at any time. The people sitting opposite the Loyalty Hall were the people from the Kieran group. After hearing Lu Jun's words, a middle-aged man with a scar on his face stood up. He slammed the table and shouted, What do you mean by this? Lu Haoyan wasn't the only one who died. Someone from our side died too. He was the second in command of the Kieran group, Lei Jiao. As soon as he spoke, The members around him also started to make a scene. They all pointed at the people from the loyalty hall and shouted, "Don't think you're so great just because you lost a fatty. Who knows if you did it yourself?" Lu Jun snorted coldly. Psychic energy gushed out of his body. He grabbed the cup on the table and threw it on the ground. With a bang, the cup shattered into pieces. The people from the Kirin group also quieted down. Only then did Lu Jun say sinisterly, "You know very well in your hearts who did it. Lone Wolf is a gang in Jadeite City. You've been trying to rope them in for months, but to no avail. Everyone knows that. I'll say it again today. If you don't hand over the murderer, no one will walk out of this door today." On the side of the loyalty hall, Lu Jun's subordinates shouted, "Hand over the murderer! Hand over the murderer!" A few of the older elders frowned and looked at each other. Compared to a bloody battle, they were now in a high position and naturally wanted to negotiate. However, ever since Lu Jun took over, the loyalty hall had long become his sole authority. At this moment, they could not say anything. After being scolded by the people of Zhongyi Hall, the Qilin group was not to be outdone. More than a dozen people pulled out their guns and pointed them at the people of Zhongyi Hall. The sound of triggers rang out. Lu Jun laughed angrily and said, "All right, it seems like there's nothing to talk about today. Let's see if you guys are better than us." After saying that, he flipped the table in front of him, and his subordinates behind him pulled out all kinds of weapons. What was particularly eye-catching was that there were 4 aptitude users with extremely strong auras standing behind Lu Jun. After Lu Jun finished speaking, they drew their weapons at the same time and prepared to attack. They were the 4 ability users of the Loyalty Hall. They were called the 4 Heavenly Kings by the outside world. In this tense moment, an extremely sharp voice suddenly resounded through the entire hall and disappeared in an instant. However, the effect was obvious. On the side of the Loyalty Hall, other than Lu Jun and the 4 Heavenly Kings, the other ordinary people all covered their ears and felt dizzy. On the side of the Qilin group, only Lei Jiao and another young man were standing. At this moment, they were all looking at the middle of the 2 sides, where a blonde foreign woman was putting away the short stick in her hand. She looked at the gazes of the Loyalty Hall and the Qilin group and said coldly, "I'm sorry, the 2 of you. The infrasound was just to calm everyone down. I've adjusted the power to the lowest level, so there's no danger. Our Violet group has come here this time for the sake of peace. Since Mr. Liu has already expressed his opinion, then I'd like to ask the leader of the Qilin group, Mr. Fong, to tell us your opinion." She was the person in charge of the Violet group's branch in Jadeite City, Jennifer. Violet Group was a true international group. They had always prioritized interests and pursued profits. After a long period of conflict, they were the ones who would be affected the most. The one who wanted the peace talks to succeed the most was probably Jennifer. However, their original ally, Lu Jun, had lost his composure at this moment after losing his beloved son. Therefore, she had no choice but to take the initiative to step forward to ease the situation. Violet Group was also the group that had sent the least number of people to this 3-party peace talk. Other than Jennifer herself, there were only 2 men in black suits behind her. However, no one dared to look down on them. Regardless of whether it was Violet Group's international background or the infrasound weapon that Jennifer had taken out earlier, both of them spoke volumes of their strength. On the side of the Qilin Group, behind Lei Jiao, a man clapped his hands and walked out. He was about 1.8 meters tall and wore a tight-fitting combat uniform. His delicate and pretty face made him look like a student. If he were to be seen on the streets, no one would be able to guess that he was the new leader of the Qilin Group, Fong Qi. Fong Qi smiled at Jennifer and said, "I've long heard that Violet Group has advanced military technology. Now that I've seen it for myself, it's truly amazing. Miss Jennifer, the person behind you must be your company's newly developed modified human warrior, right? I didn't expect that a small place like Jadeite City would be valued so highly by your company." Hearing Fong Qi's words, Jennifer was taken aback. She had not expected that Fong Qi would be able to see through the identities of the 2 people behind her. Logically speaking, modified human technology was not commonly seen in the Eastern continent. For Fangchi to be able to tell at a glance, he was not a simple person. However, when she thought of the other party's identity as a mercenary group, she understood. It was not strange that he might have seen it on the battlefields of the 18 countries in the south. Violet Group had always been in the arms trade. Fangchi then looked at Lu Jun and said, "Boss Lu, my brothers and I are just trying to make a living in Jadeite City. There's no need for the people from the Loyalty Hall to be so ruthless." Without waiting for Lu Jun to reply, one of the four heavenly kings, who was skinny and weak, called out, "Fangchi, you were lucky to have escaped the previous time. This time around, the four of us have recovered from our injuries. It won't be so easy for you to take advantage of us." Lu Jun waved his hand and stopped the short man. He then narrowed his eyes and looked at Fangchi. His small eyes, which were already squeezed by his fats, were now so small that they could not be seen. "Fangchi, when your father was still around, he caused trouble in our territory all day long. It's fine to make a living, but you can't steal other people's food, right? And this time, my son is dead. If you don't give me an explanation, don't even think about making a living. It's hard to say if you'll even have a mouth to eat." In the face of Lu Jun's aggressiveness, Jennifer did not say anything. Obviously, she also wanted to see how Fangchi would respond. After all, she and Lu Jun were allies. With so many people dead, the Secret Service might be mobilized. The Cheeling Group is not a local gang. This fatty, is he trying to suppress me? Fangchi thought to himself. He sneered and said, "The four heavenly kings are so famous. Unfortunately, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. If it weren't for so many underlings covering for you last time, I would have left at least one of you alive. Kid, you're courting death. Arrogant. If you have the guts, let's fight again." Lu Jun stopped the four of them and said coldly, "Kid Fang, you really don't want to talk?" Fangchi said, "Boss Lu, to be honest, you're not the only one who suspects me. Everyone in our group is also suspecting that you did it." "You." Lu Jun's expression changed, but he suppressed it and said, "It's definitely not us. Lone Wolf's people and I have been in contact for 6 or 7 years. Our friendship is not something you can compare to. You must have failed to collude with them, so you want to destroy them and monopolize the business in Jadeite City." In just a few words, Lu Jun suddenly felt the power of Fangchi. Not only was he sharp in his words, but he also did not show any weakness. From the moment he stood up until now, his chi and figure did not show any flaws. He obviously had great strength. It was not a coincidence that the four heavenly kings were defeated by him. "You want to slander me with just a few words? Boss Lu, aren't you being too arbitrary?" Fangchi laughed and said, "If I really wanted to make a move, why would I choose Lone Wolf? The first thing I would do would be to assassinate you. Without you, the Loyalty Hall is nothing but a pile of loose sand." "Good boy." Lu Jun was so angry that he laughed. "I have been assassinated so many times in my life that I can't count them. But in the end, I still survived. They all died. Then I want to give it a try even more." Fangchi looked at Lu Jun with a smile. He was like a big brother next door, but the murderous aura on his body was so strong that it made people tremble in fear. Even the four heavenly kings who had been clamoring for another fight quietened down. They looked at Fangchi listlessly like dogs that had fallen into the water. Lu Jun was silent for a while and looked at Jennifer. "I wonder what Violet's side means. Old fox," Jennifer thought to herself. She looked at Fangchi and said, "This matter is very sudden. None of us can produce any evidence. However, Mr. Fang and Mr. Lu have been fighting in the dark world for many years. You should know that we only rely on strength and not evidence. Recently, I heard that some people think that Mr. Fang is the strongest person in the south of the Xia. I wonder if you are interested in competing with the modified human behind me?" On the other side, Li Onping came out of the Black Dragon Mountain. He looked at the place where the sports car was parked. It was empty now. "The car is gone? Could it be that Yi Wenbin escaped?" Thinking about it, Li Onping shook his head. "That's impossible. I broke all his limbs. Then, is it Kano and the others?" Thinking of this, Li Onping quickly sniffed hard again. There was still the smell of Yu Wenbin and the car in the air. Not only that, but there was also the smell that was like a feast to him, full of temptation. He knew that it was Kano's smell. He didn't have time to think about why he could smell Kano's smell, nor did he think about why Kano would emit such a smell. He just felt more and more urgent. His whole body seemed to be urging him. Eat it, eat it, eat it. He turned around and sniffed the smell in the air. Suddenly, he looked in the direction of the jadeite city. How dare he go back? A cruel smile appeared on Li Anping's face. You're dead meat. Then his body brought out a black line. He was already shooting in the direction of the jadeite city like an arrow leaving the bow. He just hid in the forest beside the road and ran along the road. After running for a while, he stopped to smell Kano's smell to make sure that he didn't miss it. Chapter 51. In the living room, Jennifer looked at Fong Qi and said, If Mr. Fong wins against the modified human behind me, then our violet group will naturally have nothing to say. Fong Qi was not surprised. He knew that these people had been fighting and killing all year round. In the end, it was still a competition to see who had the bigger fist. Although he had defeated the 4 heavenly kings of the loyalty clan previously, he was still too young and his battle record was still insufficient. It was impossible for him to just say a few words and get the other party to give up their business. He said calmly, This is a peace talk to begin with. It's not very good to turn it into a fight, right? Lu Jun laughed and said, Kid Fong, are you afraid? He pointed at Fong Qi and said, If you don't dare to fight, then say it. It's still not too late to admit defeat. The moment Fong Qi rejected, not only Lu Jun, but everyone else present also revealed looks of contempt. Mr. Fong, it seems that the recent rumors about you have been misreported. Jennifer also looked at Fong Qi with a look of contempt. Since the other party did not dare to make a move, all the more reason for them to press on. Unexpectedly, Fong Qi suddenly laughed out loud. When did I say that I'm not going to fight? It's just that it's rare for us to get together today, so there's no point in having a casual fight. How about this? Boss Lu, you, the 4 heavenly kings, and the 2 modified humans behind Miss Jennifer, the 7 of you will come at me together. It doesn't matter if you live or die. If you win against me, I'll leave immediately and leave the Qilin group to you. The moment he said that, the entire meeting room fell silent. Everyone, including Lu Jun and Jennifer, looked at Fong Qi in astonishment, as if wondering if he had gone crazy. To think that he wanted to fight against 7 of them alone. Among the 7 of them, there were 5 ability users and 2 high-tech modified humans. Both Lu Jun and Jennifer did not believe that Fong Qi had this ability. This was not as simple as 1 + 1. The ability of 1 ability user was already a headache, let alone the fact that there were 5 of them. The remaining 2 modified humans had not even made a move yet. No one knew what kind of lethal weapons were hidden in their bodies. To defeat them alone, one would probably need to have a battle prowess of at least the 4th energy level or above. Jennifer looked at Fong Qi doubtfully and said, Mr. Fong, are you sure you want to fight against 7 of them alone? If you lose, you'll give the Qilin group to us? Not bad. Fong Qi said proudly, Today, I will fight 1 against 7. If I lose, I will hand over the Qilin order. But if I win by a fluke, I will ask Jennifer to give me her 2 cyborgs. Then, Violet will no longer interfere with my business in Jadeite City. As for the Loyalty Hall, I hope that Mr. Liu can join the Qilin group. After hearing Fong Qi's words, Lu Jun and Jennifer looked at each other. Apart from shock, there was still more shock. Then there was silence. Even the 4 heavenly kings, who had been shouting loudly earlier, stopped talking. Because Fong Qi had gambled too much today, the loser would have to pay a huge price. This was especially true for Lu Jun. Fong Qi actually wanted him to join the Qilin group. This was simply impossible. No matter what, he was still a big shot in Jadeite City. If he accidentally lost and became Fong Qi's subordinate, how would he be able to raise his head? As a result, the entire parlor fell silent. Although no one believed that Fong Qi could take on 7 people by himself, Neither Lu Jun nor Jennifer dared to place their bets. There was no other reason other than that the stakes were too high. A few minutes later, Lu Jun smiled meaningfully. He looked at Fong Chi and said, "Kid Fong, are you serious?" "Of course. Before this, we can sign a contract, regardless of life or death. What do you think of my suggestion, Boss Lu?" After saying that, Fong Chi waved his hand domineeringly, and a member behind him handed over a contract to Jennifer and Lu Jun respectively. "If the two of you have no objections, please sign it." Lu Jun took a glance at the contract, then looked at Jennifer and smiled. "Miss Jennifer, it seems that we have met an expert today." Jennifer did not smile. She stared at Fong Chi intently, as if wanting to see through him. "Mr. Fong, aren't you being a little arrogant? If you continue like this meeting won't be able to continue." "Miss Jennifer, you've said a lot earlier. Everyone here possesses strength that surpasses that of ordinary people. Ordinary laws and rules won't be able to restrain us. We only talk about strength, not evidence. Today I'll say this. The 7 of you will come at me together. As long as you can defeat me, even if you kill me, the Qilin group will belong to you. There won't be any retaliation." After saying that, Fong Chi instructed Lei Jiao behind him, "If I lose today, you'll be the leader. In the future, you'll listen to Boss Lu and Miss Jennifer's orders." The short man of the 4 heavenly kings shouted again, "Boss, what are you afraid of? Don't tell me that we can't beat this arrogant kid with so many of us." Another big man also said, "Boss, let's go. This kid has gone crazy. He wants to give the Qilin group to us. We'll just accept it." Lu Jun narrowed his eyes and stared at Fong Chi. After a long while, he shouted, "All right, I'll sign this contract. Kid Fong, if you get beaten to death later, don't blame me." "Of course." Fong Chi then looked at Jennifer and said, "Miss Jennifer, since Boss Lu has agreed, what do you think? Since the two of you are so bold, we, the Violet Mercenary Group, can't fall behind. I'll also bet on this round." After saying that, Jennifer waved her hand and motioned to the 2 men in black suits behind her. "You two, go and compete with Mr. Fong." "Yes, ma'am." One after saying that, the 2 cyborgs took a step forward. The entire parlor shook. The 2 men's suits burst apart, revealing a set of gray armor. The 2 cyborgs were completely made up of machinery from head to toe, with the exception of their heads. 2 beams of infrared rays shot out from their eyes, locking onto Fong Chi. Just as the 2 cyborgs took a step forward, Lu Jun's group of 5 also stepped forward. 5 people, 5 types of psychokinesis, pressed down on Fong Chi with an overwhelming force. Everyone, including Jennifer, except for Fong Chi, immediately retreated, leaving most of the parlor to Fong Chi and the others. An earth-shattering battle was about to begin. Just as Fong Chi and the others were about to fight, they did not expect that all of this would be seen by someone else. TSK, TSK, TSK. Amazing. Fong Chi actually wants to take on 7 of them alone. Is this guy's brain made of muscles? In a building opposite the parlor, Dong Man was holding up his binoculars and looking in the direction of the parlor. The parlor, which should have been blocked off by layers of walls, was now displayed in his eyes without any reservations. It turned out that Dong Man's ability was X-ray vision. As long as his eyes looked through the binoculars, he would be able to see the scenery behind the obstacles. It was because of this ability that he was able to survive in the Jadeite city by selling information. Right now, he had received news of the meeting between the 3 great influences and immediately rushed over to display his ability to gather information. However, Dong Man was clearly not the only one monitoring the situation of the 3 great influences. In another building, there were messy wires, documents, and office desks everywhere. Police officers kept on walking around, as if they were being chased by ghosts. On a big table, 5 to 6 monitors were placed together, displaying the situation inside and outside the parlor. They could even hear the voices of everyone present clearly. Hanwei looked at the monitors and frowned. Are they really going to fight? He raised his walkie-talkie and said, "All units, take note. Be prepared to take action at any moment. The targets this time around are all extremely vicious criminals. I allow everyone the right to kill them on the spot. I repeat, once anyone loses control, I allow you to kill them on the spot. Is the sniper in position? Hearing his subordinates report, he nodded in satisfaction. However, he thought to himself, it's good that that guy is here as well. Why isn't there any news from the Black Dragon Mountain? Just then, a member of the team ran towards him in a panic. Captain, look. What is this? Han Wei frowned and looked at the monitor that the team member was pointing at. It was a panoramic thermal vision of the building where the parlor was located. In the direction that the team member was pointing at, the thermal energy of the people disappeared one after another. As they disappeared, a large lump of thermal energy that was like a furnace was breaking through rapidly from the ground floor toward the parlor. What is this thing? In the parlor, Fong Chi and the others clearly did not know about the situation outside. He looked at Lu Jun and the other 5 and laughed out loud. Good. Ever since I came to the Xia, it has been a long time since I felt such pressure. After laughing, Fong Chi's arms shook and his entire body began to expand at an incredible speed. His shirt was instantly torn apart, revealing a layer of dark green skin. Then black scales grew on his skin. Fong Chi's entire body seemed to have turned into a monster. His arms and legs were as thick as iron buckets. The black scales on them were layered in pitch black, as if they were made of steel. Not only his limbs, but his torso and even his face were covered with these scales. He looked like a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was Fong Chi's ability, the Qilin blood of the bloodline system. As the name implied, the so-called bloodline system was an ability that could be passed down from generation to generation through the bloodline. It was also the most special ability of this system among the 6 major systems. It created countless ability user families in this world. They were all passed down through the bloodline system. The Qilin blood that Fong Chi possessed was one of the royal abilities of the Baiwa country. This ability was very terrifying. After the user transformed, not only was he invulnerable, but he also had immense strength. He could even control thunder and lightning and summon the wind and rain. As soon as Fong Chi transformed, the psychic energy in his body emerged like flames. The heavy pressure was like mercury pressing down on Lu Jun and the others. Attack! However, before Fong Chi could make his next move, Lu Jun had already taken the lead and charged forward. He knew that Fong Chi's strength was probably stronger than all 7 of them present. Therefore, if they were to surround and attack at this time, they had to seize the initiative and not give Fong Chi the slightest chance. If Fong Chi's transformation speed was not so fast, he would not even have given him the chance to transform. As Lu Jun rushed forward, he roared and threw out a punch. However, his body did not change, but the fist that he threw out became extremely huge in an instant. This was his ability, the liquefaction of his body. After his body was liquefied, he could freely change its size and was not afraid of ordinary guns and knives. There was a loud boom. The huge fist smashed on a Fong Chi's body and instantly exploded, turning into countless liquids that scattered on the ground. Fong Chi, who was standing in the same place, was unscathed. Instead, he laughed and said, "It's my turn." Chapter 52. Before he could finish his sentence, there was a series of explosions in the air. Fong Chi took a few steps and arrived in front of the short man who had been hooting just now. Oh no! Lu Jun knew that things were not good when his liquefied fist was shattered by Fong Chi's punch. Fong Chi was far stronger than he had imagined. It seemed that Fong Chi had not used his full strength when he fought with the 4 heavenly kings. However, it was not the time to think about this. The liquid that had been scattered on the ground condensed back into Lu Jun's body. His other hand had turned into a long whip, sweeping toward Fong Chi from more than 10 meters away. He knew that his strength was not as good as Fong Chi's. He just wanted to interfere with Fong Chi. At this time, Fong Chi had already punched out. His huge, black, scale-covered fist was attached with a huge amount of psyche chi. It was like a meteorite crashing down on Wang Song's chest, almost covering his entire field of vision. You'll die if you block it head-on. At this moment, facing Fang Qi's attack, Wang Song, one of the four heavenly kings, had this thought flash through his mind based on his experience in countless battles and assassinations. While he was shocked, it also stimulated all his potential. He tilted his head back, sucked in his chest, shrank his body, and kicked hard with his legs. Wang Song used all his strength to dodge this punch. At the same time, he pointed all 10 fingers at Fang Qi. His ability could eject the blood in his body like a bullet. Its power was comparable to that of a shotgun. However, facing Wang Song's counterattack, Fang Qi just closed his eyes and let the blood hit his eyelids and cheeks. There was a series of metal clashing sounds. He maintained his original appearance and threw a punch. However, this block also forced Wang Song to retreat a few centimeters, dodging the first punch. Fang Qi snorted and opened his eyes. He looked at Wang Song's position and took another step forward, throwing another punch. This time, there were blue electric sparks on his fist. He used the innate ability of the Kirin blood. The electric sparks would paralyze the opponent from a few centimeters away, not giving Wang Song any chance to dodge. However, there was a flash of joy in Wang Song's eyes. This was because when Fang Qi threw the second punch, the rest of the people had arrived. If I were to face Fang Qi alone, he would only need 2 punches to kill me. Wang Song's eyes flashed with a trace of fear and relief. Among them, Lu Jun was the first to arrive. A transparent water whip wrapped around Fang Qi's neck and was about to pull him back. At the same time, the other 3 of the 4 heavenly kings, LVXN, Fang Yong, and Zheng Ji also made their moves. LVXN opened his palms slightly in Fang Qi's direction, and an inexplicable flow of air was produced around Fang Qi's chest. This was his ability, Air Bomb, which created a shockwave by compressing the air. It could shock people to death like a bomb. Fang Yong came closer and grabbed Fang Qi's shoulders with his glowing green hands. There were more than 200 types of deadly toxins in his body. Anyone who came into direct contact with him would not feel good. Zheng Ji opened his mouth slightly, and a line of fire shot out from his mouth. It was like a red laser, burning towards Fang Qi's legs. As for the other 2 androids, they were like ice sculptures before they attacked. However, once they attacked, they were the most violent. Red lights flashed in their eyes, and they charged towards Fang Qi from both sides. No one knew how thick their exoskeleton armor was. With every step they took, there would be a loud sound coming from under their feet. When the 2 of them ran at the same time, the entire building seemed to be shaking. They were just punching Fang Qi with their bare hands, but they were able to display their mechanical power in an exquisite manner. In terms of strength, they were not any weaker than Fang Qi's earlier punch. In fact, they were even stronger. 6 experts attacked Fang Qi at the same time. Wang Song seemed to have seen the dawn of victory. If he doesn't want to be killed in one hit, he can only dodge. However, as soon as he starts to dodge, he'll be besieged. He'll definitely lose. However, just as Wang Song was thinking about this, he saw that Fang Qi did not dodge at all. The second punch did not even pause, and it continued to smash towards Wang Song's chest. At the same time, blue electric sparks covered Fang Qi's entire body. The black scales looked even more ferocious under the contrast of the psychic energy and electric sparks. The water whip was the first to be unable to take it. It retracted back into Lu Jun's body as soon as it was electrocuted. Fang Yong's poisonous hand was unable to withstand this kind of electric shock. It retreated before it could touch Fang Qi's body. However, LVXN did not care. The air bomb exploded on Fang Qi's chest, forcing him to close his eyes again. However, he merely closed his eyes. The turbulent airflow before Fang Qi was like a gentle breeze. The shockwave caused by the air bomb could not penetrate his scales at all. Meanwhile, Zheng Ji's line of fire swept across Fang Qi's legs. Other than leaving a scorched mark, it did not do anything. The defensive power of the Qilin Bloodscale armor was far beyond their expectations. Then, the fists of the two modified humans landed on his waist at the same time. Bang! Fang Qi's body shook, and the place where the fists landed actually caved in. If there were no scales, one would be able to see that Fang Qi's face had turned pale. It was obvious that the fists of the two modified humans had injured his internal organs. However, even so, Fang Qi's punch did not change its trajectory. It smashed towards Wang Song as if there was nothing in the world that could stop his punch. Ah! Wang Song let out a blood-curdling scream as he was sent flying like a pile of mud. He fell to the ground and fainted. After sending Wang Song flying with a punch, Fang Qi exhaled a mouthful of white air and ran forward. The other 6 people behind him followed him with bloodshot eyes. It was 7 against 1, and one of them had been killed right off the bat. It was simply a great humiliation. However, when Fang Qi took a deep breath and turned around to face them again, none of them could grasp his speed. At this moment, they could also see the different reactions and speeds of the 6 people present. The 2 modified humans were the fastest. They followed closely behind Fang Qi. When he turned around, they had already sent a punch towards Fang Qi's face and chest. Next was Lu Jun. He seemed to know that his ability was restrained by the electric shock and could not attack Fang Qi at close range. Therefore, he shot out several tens of liquefied tentacles from his body. He took out the pistols from his underlings and pointed all of them at Fang Qi. Next was LVXIN. When Fang Qi was moving, it was difficult for him to create an air bomb to attack him. It was because his ability required him to accumulate power. Therefore, the moment Fang Qi stopped, he started to create air explosions next to Fang Qi's ears. He wanted to attack Fang Qi's brain by vibrating his eardrums. Next was Zheng Ji. He spat out 3 fireballs from his mouth, all of which flew towards Fang Qi's face. Clearly, he knew that the flames he spat out from his mouth were not enough to break through Fang Qi's scale armor's defense. He could only attack the eyes, ears, mouth, and nose on Fang Qi's face. The slowest was Fang Yong. As a poison man, he was now the one who was most afraid of being electrocuted by Fang Qi. It was because Lu Jun could liquefy his body at any time, and the 2 modified humans had exoskeleton armors, so their ability to withstand attacks was clearly above his. The other 2 were attacking from a distance, and he was the only one who was attacking from close range. If his small body was paralyzed by the electric shock and then punched by Fang Qi, his outcome would probably not be much better than Wang Song's. However, the battle would not stop just because he was in a daze. In his eyes, Fang Qi took a deep breath, and his entire body seemed to have grown a little bigger. Facing the modified human's fists, he did not dodge. Instead, he punched out with both fists, one on the left and one on the right, and met the modified human's metal fists head-on. 3 people, for fists collided with each other, and a rumbling sound was heard. Everyone present seemed to feel the whole room shake for a moment. The marble floor under the 3 people's feet made a cracking sound that made one's teeth ache, and it turned into pieces of debris. The 2 modified humans grunted and had no choice but to retreat. Their hearts were filled with shock. Ever since they had completed the modification surgery, this was the first time they had encountered someone who could overwhelm them in terms of strength. Moreover, there were 2 of them at the same time. As the 2 of them retreated, a series of sparks flashed on Fang Qi's body. Lu Jun controlled more than 10 pistols and fired at Fang Qi's body at the same time. The huge kinetic energy generated by the impact of the bullets caused Fang Qi to stagger backward. He had no choice but to cover his head with both hands to protect his face. Then one on the left and one on the right, LVXIN's 2 air bombs exploded together with the fireballs that Zheng Ji spat out. The huge tremors caused Fang Qi's brain to buzz. In an instant, the flames engulfed his entire body. Since the start of the battle, Fang Qi had no choice but to stop for the first time. Lu Jun's face lit up with joy, and he roared, "What are you guys waiting for?" The 2 modified humans looked at each other and nodded. At the same time, they pulled out a dagger from their waists. A dangerous blue light shone from the blade of the dagger. The two modified humans attacked Fang Qi again. After the explosion, Fang Qi lowered his arm. Looking at the daggers in their hands, his pupils contracted slightly. Are these high-frequency daggers? They're the same as the ones I saw on the battlefield last time. Fang Qi knew very well how terrifying high-frequency weapons were. These daggers vibrated slightly tens of thousands of times per second. There was nothing that they could not cut through. It was impossible to block them with just flesh and blood. Even the scales produced by Fang Qi's psychic qi and Kirin blood were the same. He could only suppress the dizziness in his mind and dodge behind him. When the two modified humans saw that Fang Qi had retreated, they followed him. They definitely did not want to give Fang Qi any chance to catch his breath. On the other side, Lu Jun and the others kept shooting and predicting air explosions mixed with flames to reduce Fang Qi's space to dodge. They forced him to face the high-frequency daggers of the two modified humans head-on. Meanwhile, Fang Yong stood in front of LVXN to protect him from using his abilities. Just when everyone thought that Fang Qi was at a disadvantage and that victory was about to be decided, Fang Qi suddenly shouted. With a loud roar, his fists burst out with dazzling electric light, and he punched out at one of the cyborgs through the air. The two balls of lightning in his hands rushed out like two lightning dragons. They pounced on one of the cyborgs and kept biting, sending the cyborgs flying and falling to the ground. Electric sparks kept coming out of the cyborgs' bodies. They tried to stand up a few times, but they couldn't. They couldn't move for a while. Clearly, the Thunder Dragons had penetrated his exoskeleton armor and damaged his internal circuits. Fang Qi took this opportunity to break out of the encirclement of the two modified humans. Before anyone could react, he appeared in front of Fang Yong in a flash and knocked him out with a palm strike. Then, he quickly stepped forward and punched LVXN, who was at a loss, unconscious. By the time Lu Jun, Zheng Ji, and the other cyborg realized what had happened, only the three of them were left of the original 7 people. Ha! 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 Fang Qi looked at the remaining 3 people and gasped for breath. His arms were trembling. The technique of shooting the Thunder Dragons with both hands was very taxing on him. Even in the 100 Moon's royal family, there were not many people who could do it. The 3 of you. Fang Qi spat out a mouthful of air and said, "Do you still want to continue?" The remaining cyborg glanced at Jennifer and did not know how to answer. Lu Jun's face was pale. He stared at Fang Qi as if he had just recognized him. Zheng Ji's flames and Lu Jun's attacks could not threaten Fang Qi. There was only one modified human left. They might not be able to stop Fang Qi in close combat. The situation was very clear. Good. Lu Jun nodded and said, "Kid Fang, it's really hard for you to hide your strength. You're already at the 3rd level and almost at the 4th level." Fang Qi smiled proudly. "That's right. My Qilin blood has already reached the level of a 3rd level ability user. Plus, I'm also a 3rd level ability user. There are very few ability users who can defeat me. So, Boss Lu, you should surrender. Being my subordinate is much better than being in the loyalty hall. Plus, I'll help you get revenge for your son. How about it?" Lu Jun was silent. His brows were deeply furrowed. The conflict in his heart seemed to have reached its limit. In the hall, other than the Qilin group, the other 2 parties were silent. No one had expected this result. At this moment, facing Fang Qi's powerful strength, they only felt helpless. They quietly waited for Lu Jun's choice. Just like what Jennifer had said, in a world of darkness, strength was the final thing to rely on. But in the midst of everyone's silence, a strange chewing sound suddenly rang out. At some point, a strange person had appeared in front of Wang Song's body. Chapter 53. A strange man with 2 horns on his head squatted in front of Wang Song. He grabbed Wang Song's ear and tore it off before putting it in his mouth. As he chewed, he muttered, "Eating it raw is really disgusting, but your ability is not bad." "What are you doing?" Lu Jun glared at the strange man. With a wave of his hand, the dozens of pistols on his tentacles were all aimed at the strange man. He roared, "Let him go." The The strange man grinned at him, raised his hands above his head, and slowly retreated. Go to hell. The dozens of pistols spewed out flames at the same time, turning the strange man into a sieve. He fell into a pool of blood. Then, Lu Jun and Zheng Ji rushed up together. They looked at Wang Song and shouted, Old Wang, how are you? Zheng Ji turned Wang Song over, but the scene in front of him made his face pale. This bastard. Lu Jun gritted his teeth and cursed. Wang Song's stomach had been completely cut open, and the organs inside had disappeared without a trace. Boss, be careful. He stood up again. The underlings outside the field shouted. Hee! A strange laughter sounded behind the two of them. Hearing it, they felt a chill in their hearts. They turned around at the same time and found that the strange man had stood up from the pool of blood. The bullets had come out of his body, and the wounds on his body were slowly healing. Ultra-rapid regeneration? Lu Jun glared at him, then looked at Fang Qi and said, Kid Fang, who is he? Why'd he kill Wang Song and eat him? He suspected that this was a backup plan left behind by Fang Qi, a helper that he had invited. Unexpectedly, Fang Qi shook his head and said, I don't know him, but since he dared to do such a thing under our eyes, I will naturally give Boss Lu an explanation. He turned to look at the strange man and asked, Who are you? Who sent you here? If you think that you can do whatever you want just because you have a little regeneration ability, then you are gravely mistaken. I will make you regret having this ability. As he spoke, he walked towards the strange man and reached out to grab his neck. Fang Qi had considered the possibility that the other party might retaliate, but he believed that with his strength and combat skills, the other party's resistance would be futile. However, nothing happened. The other party was caught without any resistance. Its thick and black claws looked like those of an ancient wild beast. It grabbed the strange man's neck as if it was squeezing a little chick. The people around him were afraid that Fang Qi would break his neck if he wasn't careful. This shorty's ability is very useful. The strange man only chuckled and looked at Fang Qi with a strange gaze. Fang Qi had only seen such a gaze on the starving refugees on the battlefield. It was as if it could never be full and could eat anything it saw. Suppressing the strange feeling in his heart, Fang Qi squeezed the strange man's neck and asked coldly, I'm asking who you are. Who sent you? I know you have the ability to regenerate. If you don't answer me, I will break your neck. The strange man looked at Fang Qi and sneered. Then a strange sound came from his body. Creak, creak. It was as if something was squeezing and flowing inside his body. Just as Fang Qi was feeling strange, the strange man's eyes kept popping out. Half of his eyeballs seemed to be about to fall out of their sockets as they stared at Fang Qi. Bang! A series of firecracker-like explosions sounded. Countless blood beads shot out from the strange man's body, from his arms, thighs, stomach, chest, neck, and face. One by one, the wounds were torn apart by the blood droplets that shot out. Even his eyeballs were ruptured. 2 blood thorns poked out from within and stabbed into Fang Qi's eyes. Ah! Fang Qi screamed and punched the strange man away. In the living room, screams came one after another. Almost everyone was hit by the blood beads and fell to the ground. Only a few people were still alive. Among them, Lu Jun's body was liquefied. He was unharmed. Zheng Ji covered his chest. Although he tried his best to dodge, he was still hit by a few bullets. Before an ability user reached the 3rd energy level, they couldn't use psychic energy to block attacks that were as powerful as a small caliber pistol. Fang Yong and LVXIN, who were on the ground, were not hurt because they weren't standing. As for the 2 androids, the blood beads couldn't penetrate their exoskeleton armor. Lei Jiao from the Kirin group and Jennifer from the Violet group were also fine. The former moved slightly and dodged all the blood beads. The latter hid behind the androids in advance. Although Jennifer wasn't an android, one of her eyes was implanted with a mechanical eye. She saw the strange changes in the strange man's body. After this wave of attacks, Fang Qi was the most injured person. He covered his eyes as blood flowed out. The veins on his forehead were bulging. His heart was filled with anger. Lei Jiao quickly came to his side and helped him up. "Leader, are you okay? I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him." Fang Qi roared like an angry lion. He, you can't kill me." The strange man walked toward Fang Yong and LV Xian. The wounds on his body from the blood beads had healed. His eyes were back to normal. It was impossible to tell that he had used such a terrifying and strange ability before. Looking at Fang Qi's appearance, Lu Jun's heart flashed with a hint of joy. Originally, he had already been forced into a corner by Fang Qi. Who would have thought that such a strange person would appear and blind Fang Qi's eyes? Although he had lost a bunch of his followers, he could have as many followers as he wanted. Compared to Fang Qi being blinded, he had gained a lot. Lu Jun saw the strange man reaching for Fang Yong and LV Xian. He quickly liquefied his body and turned into a 3-meter-tall water giant. He rushed over. Although the opponent's ability was strange, he was not afraid of physical attacks because of his liquefied body. Although the strange man had blinded Fang Qi's eyes, seeing how he had eaten Wang's song earlier, Fang Qi had to hurry over to protect the unconscious Zheng Ji and Fang Yong. But after a few steps, he stopped. Although the current situation was good, it was not enough to determine the victory. Fang Qi had only been blinded, and the transformation from the Kylan blood had not been removed. And since the other party was proficient in the martial arts of the Bayou country, it was hard to say whether losing his vision would reduce his combat power. And apparently, Lei Jiao was also a superpower user. Although his combat power was unknown, he was unharmed. On the other hand, he was the only one unharmed from the loyalty sect. On Violet's side, only Jennifer and another cyborg were still capable of fighting. But thinking about it carefully, if the strange man was still alive, the modified human would have to protect Jennifer, and Lei Jiao would have to protect Fang Qi. Only he, as the leader of the loyalty sect, was not threatened by the strange man's attack. Lei Jiao was supporting Fang Qi. When he saw Lu Jun stop, he could not help but roar. "Boss Lu, what are you doing? Hurry up and arrest him." Jennifer also yelled from the side. "The heat in this man's body is getting higher. I don't know what attack he is preparing. Catch him quickly." Lu Jun smiled and slowly walked in front of the strange man. He did not throw a punch, as he had expected. Instead, he extended a dozen tentacles from his body to grab the strange man. "If I throw a punch, I might send him flying and kill him. But if I catch him, will he attack me indiscriminately like before? If that's the case, I might be able to take advantage of this meeting." While Lu Jun was still thinking about the battle between the three major forces, he did not know that he had made a mistake that he would regret for the rest of his life. If he had used all his strength to turn his body into a hammer or a fist to blast the strange man away, or turned it into a sharp blade to cut the strange man's hand, or if he had saved Zheng Ji first and used the water whip to sweep them away, then the following events might have been different. However, Lu Jun, under some unknown thinking, under his contempt and ignorance of the strange man, and under the strange man's pretense of being weak, chose to use the water tentacles to control and catch the strange man. Therefore, in the few seconds he was late, the strange man had already grabbed Fang Yong's shoulder. Lu Jun's liquid tentacles had finally caught the strange man. However, when he pulled hard, he realized that he could not hold the strange man back. Such strength! Just as Lu Jun was surprised by the strange man's strength, the strange man suddenly bit Fang Yong in his hand, biting off a piece of flesh from his neck. Poor Fang Yong, who was unconscious, opened his eyes and moved his mouth. He did not even have the chance to scream before he died. Lu Jun roared and extended a dozen more tentacles, finally catching the strange man. However, the strange man did not resist at all. He just kept chewing the piece of flesh in his mouth. Not only Lu Jun, but even Lei Jiao and Jennifer felt a sense of fear. "You lunatic!" Lu Jun began to regret that he was one step too late. Another brother had died. He did not care about the three major forces or Fang Qi's life. He directly dragged the strange man into his 3-meter-tall, liquefied body. "Just drown in my body." Chapter 54. Struggle. It's useless to beg for mercy. I want you to regret everything you've done in this watery hell. After Lu Jun said this, he did not see any anxiety or regret on the other party's face as he had imagined. The strange man was dragged into Lu Jun's giant body of water, but he did not panic at all. Instead, after eating the meat in his mouth, he showed a hint of satisfaction. Then he opened his mouth wide and began to vomit. Yes, he began to vomit in the waterman's body. Large globs of black ink-like liquid were vomited out of his mouth. The black liquid spread throughout the waterman's body, covering most of his body in the blink of an eye. What is this? Lu Jun felt that something was wrong. He turned around and threw the strange man out of his body. However, the black liquid did not decrease at all. Instead, it increased, gradually covering the waterman's entire body and turning it black. The strange man was thrown to the ground by Lu Jun. He stood up, coughing, and wiped the black liquid that still remained at the corner of his mouth. What did you do on my body? The strange man ignored him. He chuckled and walked toward LVXIN. Lu Jun shouted angrily. He turned one of his hands into a giant hammer and smashed it in front of the strange man's eyes, shattering the marble floor. Answer me, what did you do? The strange man looked back at him, then clenched one hand into a fist and punched the water hammer in front of him with a backhand. Under Lu Jun's incredulous gaze, the powerful punch smashed the water hammer into pieces. It turned into countless water droplets and gathered toward Lu Jun once again. Violet, Hall of Loyalty, Kirin Group. Let me introduce myself. My name is Kano. The strange man looked at the people in the parlor and grabbed LVXN. No one stopped him. The strange man's ability was stranger than they had imagined. They planned to not rush into action before they figured it out. Kano did not seem to be provoking them. This time, he only used his fingernails to slide a wound on LVXIN's arm, then licked LVXIN's blood. You should have heard of me. I'm the leader of the Lone Wolves, Kano said after licking the blood. Impossible. Kano should not have this ability, and he doesn't look like you, Lu Jun retorted. On the side, Jennifer also said, Sir, no matter who you are now an enemy of the three strongest forces in Jadeite City. Do you understand your situation? You are the ones who don't understand your situation. Mortals. Kano casually tossed the unconscious LVXIN onto the ground. He looked at everyone present and said with a provocative expression, My ability is evolution. I can adjust the structure of my body. By sucking the flesh and blood of ability users, I can even possess their abilities. If all of you had stopped me together just now, then we might have had a chance. But now, just when everyone was in disbelief and looking at Kanoa with questioning gazes, his palm bent slightly and aimed at Zheng Ji. Zheng Ji looked at Kanoa with a panicked expression. You, what are you doing? He was shot through the chest by a blood bullet just now and was already heavily injured. Being stared at by Kanoa at this moment, an intense uneasiness welled up in his heart. Kanoa smiled faintly, his palm squeezing hard. Boom! The air gathered under the inexplicable pressure and then exploded. The huge wind generated by the air pressure swept through the entire conference room, shattering a large row of glass windows. Zheng Ji, who was at the location of the explosion, had already fallen down with blood all over his body. It's a pity the time is a little short. If it's just sucking blood to grasp this ability and increase its might, I'm afraid it'll take even longer. Kanoa looked at his own palm and shook his head. But his series of actions frightened the few people around him. They saw very clearly that what Kanoa used was the air bomb that originally belonged to LVXN. How is this possible? Whether it was Jennifer, Lu Jun, or Lei Jiao, they all did not dare to believe their eyes at this moment. There was actually the ability to learn other people's abilities. Associating it with the blood bullet from before, wasn't that Wang Song's ability? Thinking up to here, their eyes that looked at Kanoa were filled with fear. Just sucking a mouthful of blood, and he could possess other people's abilities. This kind of ability was simply too heaven-defying. Thinking about how Kanoa looked like possessing dozens, hundreds of abilities, Everyone's hair could not help standing on end. If that was really the case, most likely no one in the entire world would be his match anymore. A bad thought also surfaced in Lu Jun's mind. He pointed at Kanua and said in a trembling voice, "You, could it be that you? Oh, you're only reacting now?" Kanua walked in front of Zheng Ji and stirred the other party's corpse with his finger, then put it in his mouth. "That's right, I injected the poison into your body. Although your liquefied body is immune to physical attacks and doesn't react when the poison is injected, you still have to revert to your original body, right? If you revert back with these toxins, what will happen to your body? Unless you can never revert back for the rest of your life. Otherwise, you're dead for sure." After Kanua finished speaking, he spat out the flesh and blood in his mouth with a poof. So disgusting. All in all, your life is already heading towards the countdown. After you die, I'll take the abilities from your body. Haha, I quite like liquefied abilities. Duh. Damn it. Lu Jun looked at his own body that had turned pitch black, unable to speak. What Kanua said was right. After he reverted to his original body, these toxins would also stay in his body, and the time he could stay liquefied was also not unlimited. Seeing Lu Jun's bewildered appearance, Kanua directly looked at Feng Qi. His Qilin blood was the ability he wanted to obtain the most among all the people present. However, the Feng Qi from before was very threatening, so he could only deliberately show weakness and plot against the other party's eyes. But even so, he only felt that the overall situation was set after absorbing the abilities of 4 people. As for Violet's side, modified people were not on his menu, and Jennifer was just a normal person, which was in line with Violet's style of managing people and combat personnel. But when he looked at where Feng Qi was, only Feng Qi was left, and Lei Jiao was already nowhere to be found. Did he escape? Just as this thought flashed through Kanua's mind, an ice-cold sensation streaked across his body, and his line of sight kept falling in a 360-degree rotation. At the end of his gaze, he could only see his headless body turning into pieces and falling to the ground, while Lei Jiao was standing behind him, slowly putting away a machete into his arms. Super speed ability? With this doubt, Kanua's world sank into darkness. Lei Jiao's ability was super speed. He could move and attack at a speed that left the human retina. Just as Kanua was speaking with assurance, he already clearly understood that this monster in front of him must be eliminated immediately. Go back to hell and enjoy it. Lei Jiao's foot carried psychic energy as it stepped on Kanua's head, stomping his head into mush. "How is it, Lei Jiao, did you kill him?" Feng Qi asked. His eyes were stabbed, and he could not see the situation in front of him clearly. He can't be any more dead. Seeing that Kanua was killed, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief, but Lu Jun cried out in pain. One of his arms turned back to its original appearance, but it was instantly infiltrated by black venom, turning into a pile of rotten flesh. And the other parts of his body were also constantly switching between liquefaction and flesh. Clearly, the liquefaction time limit was up. Originally, he could still hold on a little longer, but abilities were related to the user's mental and physical state. Lu Jun, who knew his own condition, clearly had an extremely unstable mental state, and the liquefaction time also became shorter. Finally, with a puff, Lu Jun's entire body turned back to its original appearance. But in the next instant, black venom gushed out from his body, and he also knelt on the ground in an instant, completely dead. A powerful ability user died, just like that, and everyone present was a little surprised. Lu Jun's liquefaction was a very powerful and invincible ability in some ways, but in the end, he was killed so easily. Lei Jiao was very emotional, but also very understanding. Lu Jun had this day precisely because he relied on his liquefaction ability and always allowed others to attack him. Unlike Lu Jun, Lei Jiao's biggest taboo was to be attacked ever since he obtained super speed. Dodging, this was his method to deal with almost all attacks. Speed was his life, and before he knew the opponent's ability, he definitely would not let the opponent's attack hit him. So maintaining vigilance at all times, ready to dodge attacks anytime and anywhere, was also his life-saving method. This time, this life-saving method saved him once again. Countless blood thorns shot out from Kanua's body and immediately penetrated Lei Jiao's body. But a second later, his body gradually dissipated. That was Lei Jiao's afterimage, and he had already appeared in front of Feng Qi. "What's going on?" Feng Qi asked suspiciously. "He's resurrected and keeps shooting out blood from his body." Blood constantly turned into thorns and drilled out from Kanua's body, and his entire body seemed to have turned into a blood-colored bramble monster. The blood thorns shot towards Zheng Ji, LVXN, Fang Yong, and Lu Jun on the ground, dragging them over. "Stop him quickly." Jennifer watched as LVXN's body was fused into the monster's body and exclaimed, "He's recovering from his injuries by devouring corpses. Stop him immediately, or he'll resurrect again." Before Jennifer could finish speaking, Lei Jiao had already moved. Countless afterimages appeared around the monster, cutting off his blood thorns one by one. This guy's ability far surpasses Wang Song's performance. Countless data flowed out of Jennifer's eyes like a waterfall. She watched as the monster kept shooting out blood thorns, attacking Lei Jiao while grabbing corpses, revealing a terrified expression. Originally, Wang Song could only shoot out blood bullets, and in order not to bleed too much, he was also afraid that there would be too many wounds, so he only shot out a little bit of blood from his fingers. But Kanua, who was in front of her, not only was his blood spraying out like a fountain, but he could even turn his blood into blood thorns and shoot them out. Not only can he acquire other people's abilities, but he can also develop other people's abilities to a deeper level, even surpassing the original user. Moreover, his body structure is completely different from ordinary humans. At least, it's absolutely impossible for ordinary humans to still be alive like this, and even take out all their blood to use as weapons. Even if it's Wang Song, if he were to do this, the first person to die would be himself. Although Lei Jiao's speed was very fast, there were simply too many blood thorns. After Kanoa ate a corpse, the blood thorns became even faster, and their number increased as well. Even the wounds on his body began to heal faster. Jennifer immediately said to the modified human, "Go and help Lei Jiao, or we'll all die." The modified human said hesitantly, "But I need to protect you. I don't need protection. Go and destroy him quickly. Otherwise, forget about us. The entire Jadeite city will probably be finished. Once this monster eats all of us, I'm afraid that even Xia Dragonfinch won't be able to do anything to him." The modified human nodded and charged forward. However, he had only taken a few steps when he stopped. Chapter 55. Under Suomi's horrified gaze, Li Onping slowly walked up to him. "Where's Kano?" I don't know. He's crazy. He said he wanted to subdue Violet, the Cheeling group, and the Loyalty Hall. He's gone first, and he'll give us a signal." With a squelch, Li Onping smashed Suomi's head. He absorbed the other party's soul. After killing these two people, his physical fitness improved again, becoming Strength 4. 1, Agility 3, 0, and Stamina 4. 6. It looked like these two people were much stronger than what they had shown. Especially the second person killed by Li Onping. His strength was on par with Jiang Chuan, whom Li Onping had killed on the building. However, they still did not know Kano's exact location. Therefore, Li Onping could only sniff again. Fortunately, Kano was also walking along the highway. Although some time had passed, Li Onping could still smell his scent. Right at this moment, the sound of a radio station entered his ears. It was the sound of a radio broadcast on a certain car. Breaking the news at the last minute. First Avenue to Third Avenue have been completely sealed off by the police. According to official sources, this is a joint act by the SWAT team and the fire department. However, the citizens heard unexplained explosions and crossfire at the scene. As for the specific reason, our reporter, Li Onping suddenly squatted down. A force that could topple mountains and overturn seas gathered and brewed under his feet. Then he leaped forcefully, his entire being brought up a white airwave as he flew in the direction of Kano. Wherever he passed, the loud sound of the air being torn apart made people think that a fighter jet was streaking across the sky. He flew all the way until he was a kilometer away before he began to land slowly. Back to just now, inside the building, Dongman's eyes were wide open as he looked at the situation in the reception room in disbelief. The combat strength and ability that Kano displayed were really too shocking. This was a terrifying ability that had never appeared in the entire history of mankind. Big news. Big news. How much can this information be exchanged for? Dongman's mind was filled with such thoughts. With the abilities that Kano had displayed, who knew how many people in the world would be interested in him? Not only did Xia Dragonfinch, but the countries in the south, even the Fire Dragon Vanguard in the north, the Shadow Corps in the east, and the countries in the western continent, all the major powers would swarm over like sharks that had smelled blood. And the Kanua before him was obviously not someone who would allow himself to be trampled on. It was even to the extent that, judging from the ability he displayed, he might even become stronger the more he fought. To become a truly invincible existence? Thinking of this, Dongman suddenly shivered. If this kind of monster that absorbed energy through eating people became the strongest, then an ability user like him would be in danger. Should we report this to the Jadeite City's Secret Service as soon as possible? Just as Dongman was lost in his thoughts, a loud shout came from outside the window. "I've finally found you, Kano. Who are you? So reckless?" Thinking of this, Dongman turned the binoculars to the place where the sound came from. He saw Li Onping running all the way between the tall buildings, heading towards Kano's direction. It's him? Dongman recognized Li Onping. The other party was the one who asked him about Lone Wolf a few days ago. He also suspected that the annihilation of Lone Wolf these few days had something to do with him. He was a little surprised by the other party's strength. He probably had the strength between Lu Jun and the four Heavenly Kings. A young man with a bright future. That was what Dongman thought. However, he did not think that Li Onping, who had appeared now, could change anything. Although he also had complaints about the tyrannical behavior of the three major forces, whether he was willing to admit it or not. Loyalty Hall, Violet, and the Qilin group were indeed very powerful, especially just now. Whether it was Feng Qi's bravery and ferocity in battle, or Lu Jun's and the four Heavenly Kings' strange abilities, or Thunder Jiao's unparalleled speed, or Violet's advanced technology of the modified humans. They could all be said to be the top warriors among ability users. However, even such people could not last more than a few minutes in front of a monster like Kano. They were popped like bubbles. Right now, in Dongman's heart, Kano had already become a demon king-level existence. Perhaps only experts from national organizations like the Xia Dragonfinch and Fire Dragon Vanguard could stand up to him. Dongman even vaguely guessed that even Han Wei and Mo Chiuyan of the Jadeite City Special Task Force might not be a match for Kano right now. He still did not know that Mo Chiuyan had already been killed. Otherwise, his guess would be even more confirmed. Looking at the way Li Onping was charging towards the reception hall, Dongman could only shake his head and say, "Idiot." He did not know that Li Onping was a monster whose combat strength could not be measured by ability level at all. His true combat strength had long since far surpassed the so-called first-level ability level. This idiot! At the same time, in another building, Han Wei looked at Li Onping, who had suddenly appeared, and also cursed loudly. Who does he think he is? Han Wei fiercely smashed the walkie-talkie in his hand to the ground and said angrily, rushing over alone, "Does he think he's a level 5 ability user? Being eaten by Kano will only increase the opponent's strength, this idiot." One of his subordinates on the side gathered his courage and said, "He probably still doesn't know Kano's ability." Who knew that as soon as he spoke, Han Wei would scold him loudly? "Didn't I tell you to seal off the scene and not let anyone in? How'd he get in? A bunch of trash. He's too fast." That person still wanted to say something, but was quickly stopped by his colleagues beside him. Han Wei scolded a few more times, then picked up the walkie-talkie and began to assign tasks. All ability users back off, don't engage in close combat. Snipers in position, firepower personnel, pay attention to suppression, take out all the rockets. Team 3, bring the liquid nitrogen over, then freeze him for me. Someone asked, then what about Feng Qi, Jennifer, and Li Anping? I don't care if they die. Han Wei roared, continue to call me, notify the people in Tianjing, and send me the video just now. Also, he spoke halfway when his eyes suddenly opened wide, his breathing rapid, as if someone was pulling his neck, unable to say a single word. He stared blankly at the image on the screen, seemingly stupefied. How is this possible? You're Kano? Li Anping stood on the window, sweeping a glance over the entire living room, and finally set his gaze on the demon-like Kano. Who are you? For some reason, Kano felt that there seemed to be a kind of smell on the other person's body that he didn't like. Jennifer on the side shouted at Li Anping, hurry up and escape. Notify the Secret Service team. This guy can absorb ability users' abilities. Don't fight him head-on. Li Anping glanced at her, as if he didn't hear anything, turning his head to look at Kano again. Lone Wolf, you organized it, right? Those girls in the cave at Black Dragon Mountain were also done by you, right? Jennifer said angrily. You idiot, can't you hear human words? Lu Jun and the 4 heavenly kings were all killed. Hurry up and leave here. Go notify the Secret Service team. No one paid attention to her. Even Feng Qi was whispering something to Lei Jiao, not knowing what they were planning. However, their voices were heard clearly by Li Anping. Jennifer is protected by the modified human. In a while, I'll throw this guy who just came out as bait. We'll take the chance to escape. Damn it. Feng Qi covered his eyes, his face full of anger, but in the end, he had no choice but to agree with Lei Jiao. Although unwilling to admit it, Kano in front of them was indeed far beyond the level they could deal with. Taking the chance when the other party was devouring others to escape and save their lives was the right way to go. Li Anping didn't pay attention to them either. He just looked at Kano, and Kano was also the most unscrupulous person present. He laughed loudly. What? You're here for revenge? Oh, right? I remember, right? You Wenbin told me before. Could it be that you're the man who killed many of his subordinates these few days? Very good. Kano stuck out his tongue, licking his lips. Then you should be an ability user too. It's a pity that your luck is too bad. You really came at the wrong time. Li Anping ignored Kano's provocation, not even saying a word. After going through so many twists and turns, he finally found the scum in front of him. Whether it was Lone Wolf's human trafficking or his own brutal behavior, Li Anping wished he could tear Kano into pieces. The anger in his body boiled up in an instant, pouring out along with all the strength in his body. In the living room, no one reacted except for Lei Jiao, who had high-speed abilities. But even he could only barely see a blurry figure sprinting. Then the figure crashed into Kano's body. Only then did the wind hit Lei Jiao's face, blowing his clothes until they fluttered loudly. Then with a loud bang, the entire living room's floor cracked in an instant, collapsing, forming a large hole big enough to place a truck. And Kano and that figure had already disappeared. There was another series of crashing sounds. The two people crashed through 5 floors in a row. Amidst the spinning world, Kano didn't even react to what happened. He only felt a huge, irresistible force pressing down on his body. Wrapping him up, he smashed fiercely towards the floor. The furiously Anping simply didn't know what holding back was. Even he himself didn't think of using full strength. But still not enough. Still not enough. Still not enough. Still not enough. Amidst a furious roar, Li Anping transformed into a giant that was over 2 meters tall, and then a punch fiercely smashed on Kano's face. Unstoppable, also unstoppable. Kano's face was squashed into a ball within a few tenths of a second. Then, because of the residual force of this punch, his head carried a huge kinetic energy, dragging him out, passing through the glass window and flying into the air. It wasn't over yet. Li Anping was like a death god chasing after his life, appearing in the air almost at the same time. Then he grabbed Kano's deformed head and swung his arm fiercely. Kano crashed into the ground like a meteor. Boom! A shockwave visible to the naked eye swept past. In the fierce wind, Kano's head was the first to land, exploding like a watermelon. Then it was his neck, torso, legs. The originally perfect body was squeezed together by a huge force, turning into minced meat in an instant. And until now, Kano's entire train of thought was still muddled. But under his instinctive reaction, he still started to rapidly heal himself. Chapter 56. Kano's self-healing ability was there ever since he obtained the ability. However, it was very weak at that time, and could only heal some minor injuries. It was only after eating the first person that this ability gradually strengthened. And now, after devouring so many ability users, his self-healing ability was strengthened to an exaggerated extent. In the meat paste, he was like a demon crawling out of flesh and blood. In almost a few seconds, Kano, who had already turned into meat paste, had already recovered to normal. Even his skin was filled with a delicate red color. "You're dead," Kano said furiously to Li Onping, who was slowly walking over. "I'm going to slice off your flesh piece by piece and eat it in front of you." Li Onping appeared in front of Kano in a flash and slapped the other's face, directly bending Kano's neck by 90 degrees. He spun and flew out. He crashed into a wall. Kano crawled out from a pile of rubble. His eyes were red, and he looked at Li Onping with murderous intent. "Very good. You have self-healing ability. That's really good." Li Onping looked at Kano, who was slowly crawling up from the ground with a pair of eyes glaring at him. He looked at Kano, who used both hands to twist his head back, and his injuries recovered in an instant. He clenched his fists tightly. "You have two pieces of news. The good news is that I'm afraid I can't kill you right away." Li Onping looked at Kano with a ferocious expression. The muscles all over his body were stretched taut, and endless malice rushed out. Even Kano was shocked. "The bad news is that you'll be tortured by me until you die." Boom! Li Onping rushed up again, but this time what greeted his eyes was endless water. In the living room, Lei Jiao, Jennifer, and the others all ran to the window, looking at the two people on the street with shocked eyes. Who is this person exactly? This kind of power and this kind of speed, I've never seen it before. Jennifer said bitterly. Her self-confidence and confidence as the person in charge of the Violet Branch vanished without a trace after encountering the two monsters, Li Onping and Kano, in succession within a day. Lei Jiao and Feng Qi were speechless. The man's psychokinesis was unbelievably weak, but on the contrary, his physical strength was simply terrifyingly strong. Whether it was the transformed Feng Qi, the modified human, or even Kano, they were all far inferior. This was all because Li Onping's combat strength couldn't be measured by his ability level, causing them to make an error in their judgment. Lei Jiao slowly opened his mouth and said, "Although psychic energy is mainly used in close combat to attack and defend, the quantity and quality of psychic energy can be regarded as a direct reflection of an ability user's strength. But he's a monster. I've never heard of anyone with such a low ability level who could display such a powerful combat strength." Lei Jiao remembered that he was actually thinking of hitting on him just now. It was really dangerous. Feng Qi still didn't say anything, but he wasn't completely unresponsive as he listened to Lei Jiao's narration. From his furrowed eyebrows, one could see that his heart wasn't calm. As for Han Wei and Dong Man's sides, they were even more shocked. But right in front of everyone's eyes, Kanua finally used his ability. Practically the instant Li Onping rushed up, his entire body had already completely liquefied, and he was no longer a 3-meter-tall water person like Lu Jun. Instead, he turned into a surging wave, smashing towards Li Onping with the momentum to drown the entire street. "Ha ha, this is my ability. I who have a variety of abilities is invincible. What's the use of having great strength? Could it be that you can kill water? Can you kill a great river?" Li Onping pursed his lips and didn't say a word. He just threw a few punches at the oncoming wave. Thunderous explosions rang out, and the huge force smashed down, blasting the wave into pieces. But in the next moment, it gathered together again and continued to pounce towards Lianping. Although the wave that Kanoa turned into right now couldn't be called a great river, it was clearly not something that Lianping could easily break. Even if Lianping's strength was great enough, even able to scatter the wave with one punch, it did not cause any harm to Kanoa. Merely delaying for a few seconds, the wave still hit Lianping's body, following which it turned into a waterspout, wrapping Lianping's body up. Finally, it turned into a water ball, locking Lianping up like a water prison. Lianping only felt as if he was sealed in the deep end of a swimming pool, his limbs unable to touch the ground. No matter how he swam, the surrounding water prison would follow him closely. He threw a punch forcefully. The water current surged in the water ball, but when it reached the surface of the water ball, it only exploded into a splash. Following that, the water that splashed out seemed to have intelligence, slowly wriggling back, gathering back into the water ball once more. Throwing out a few more punches, he already felt that breathing was somewhat difficult. And outside the water ball, a liquefied Kanoa's head popped out, laughing wildly. "Idiot, do you think it's useful for you to use your fist to hit the water? Struggle. The more you move, the faster you'll die in the water. But don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. I'll torture you slowly, eating you bit by bit carefully. I definitely won't let you have any danger to your life." Finished speaking, Kanoa looked at Lianping's motionless appearance and laughed at him wantonly for a while. Following that, his head would disappear into clear water once more. And in the water ball, a speck of black appeared out of thin air, starting to spread gradually. The eyelids of all the onlookers twitched. They could not be more familiar with this scene before their eyes. It was precisely the method Kanoa used to kill Lu Jun, using poison to spread throughout the other party's body, killing the enemy with poison. Originally, this was what Kanoa, who was trapped in the water, used to kill Lu Jun, who had turned into a waterman. But it could be used here to kill the same person, but from the trapper, he became the trapped person. He doesn't know about this ability. Looking at Lianping's completely unaware appearance, this thought flashed through Jennifer's mind. But just as she was about to remind the other party, the black poison seemed to know what he was thinking, multiplying by several dozen or even several hundred times in an instant, covering most of the water ball and also enveloping Lianping entirely. It's over. He's dead for sure. Everyone present had this thought. Kanoa was no exception. When he saw this, he was overjoyed. The other party's physical strength had always made him feel a lingering fear, but also aroused the greed in his heart even more. He could not wait to eat the other party and obtain Lianping's ability. But currently, he could only withstand the other party's physical attacks by transforming into a waterman. This virus will only make a person's limbs weak and powerless, their internal organs failing, and their flesh gradually rotting. It won't kill him immediately, but it can make him gradually lose his combat ability. I'll enjoy you properly. In the blink of an eye, the black poison had already covered the entire water ball. Kanoa waited for another 10 seconds before withdrawing the water ball and turning back into his human form, standing before Lianping. The moment the water ball disappeared, Lianping descended from midair, standing on the ground. But his body was already completely covered by a layer of pitch-black mucus, emitting a foul stench. He lowered his head, looking at his own body without moving an inch. No one knew what he was thinking about. Kanoa walked up to him, smirking as he said, "Do you feel like your body can't exert any strength?" He started to circle around Lianping, his greedy gaze constantly sizing up the other party. "I said before that I won't let you die so easily. I'll bite off your flesh bit by bit." Kanoa walked back to Lianping, looking into Lianping's eyes face to face, and said, "If you cry and beg me now, I might just give you a quick death." Lianping looked at Kanoa, his eyes full of mockery. "Are you an idiot?" The next instant, Kanoa's expression changed drastically. Lianping's palm was already pressing on his face, directly grabbing him over and punching through his chest. Unfortunately, Li Onping only felt his palm pass through a layer of water screen. Kanoa's reaction this time was very quick. The moment he felt that the situation was not right, he liquefied again. It was also possible that he was scared by Li Onping when he was in his human form just now. Kanoa, who transformed into a water person, once again wrapped around Li Onping in front of him. But this time, Li Onping's reaction was also very quick. Before he was wrapped up again, he kicked hard with both feet, already breaking through the water screen, appearing 10 meters away. Then he leaped again, retreating more than 50 meters. He glared at Kanoa like a tiger eyeing its prey. Why? Why doesn't the poison work on you? Kanoa, who transformed into a water person, was no longer afraid of Li Onping's attack and could not help opening his mouth to ask. Li Onping gave a cold laugh and did not answer. He just shook his body, only to see the mucus covering his skin was like dried straw paper, all shaken off by him. He naturally would not tell Kanoa the reason. Viruses also depended on who it was used on. With his physique as high as 4'6", ordinary viruses could not do anything to him at all. Seeing that Li Onping did not answer, Kanoa cursed a few times in a manic manner, and then charged up. His entire body turned into a water dragon, crashing towards Li Onping from top to bottom. But Li Onping's speed was faster than his to begin with. Now that he was fully on guard to not let him get swept in, how could Kanoa possibly succeed? It was only to see him easily evade the water dragon's impact. He even smashed the water dragon's head into smithereens with a backhand hammer. Roar! The furious water dragon reformed and opened its mouth, spewing a large bundle of flames towards Li Onping. The raging flames were God knows how many times stronger in power compared to when Zheng Ji used it previously. The flames had not shot to Li Onping's face yet, and his hair was already suffused with a burnt yellow color. Facing the surging flames, Li Onping did not dodge or hide. With a loud shout, he exhaled a long breath. His huge lung capacity and monster-like physical fitness caused Li Onping's breath to be like a gale. It actually blew the flames to the side, blowing away most of them. There was even a part that rolled back, turning part of the water dragon's body into water vapor. Li Onping looked at the water dragon's shrunken body, his eyes lighting up. He seemed to have thought of something. But in the next moment, there was an explosion in the air right before his eyes. It was the air bomb's superpower. Li Onping blocked the attack on the spot, but it also gave Kanoa a chance to use this ability. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.